Hey there, fellow explorers of the unknown. Tonight, we're sinking into the darkest, most mysterious, and genuinely unsettling secrets hidden beneath our planet's waters. From shadow zones, where equipment fails and time itself seems to bend, to ancient cables that whisper messages when they should be silent. From perfectly geometric structures on the seafloor that shouldn't exist to massive spirals carved into the ocean crust with mathematical precision. The oceans cover more than 70% of Earth, yet we've mapped the surface of Mars more thoroughly than the bottom of our own seas. That's not a coincidence. Perhaps there's something down there we're not meant to find. Something that exists in those crushing depths where sunlight dies, and sometimes so do the rules of reality as we understand them. Before we descend into these watery mysteries together, take a moment to hit that subscribe button. If you're fascinated by the unexplained and the unexplored, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from and what time it is. I'm always curious who's staying up late to peer into the abyss with me, and who's brave enough to listen to these stories in broad daylight. Dim your lights, settle in somewhere comfortable, and prepare yourself for a journey into places few humans have ever witnessed, and even fewer have returned to tell about. The ocean isn't just water. It's an ancient, alien realm existing right alongside our familiar world, filled with phenomena science still struggles to explain and mysteries that have remained unsolved for generations. Imagine yourself drifting above the Mariana Trench, nearly 7 miles of water between you and the seafloor below. The pressure there would crush a human body instantly, yet something moves in that darkness. Something listens when sonar pings. Travel through the depths, something occasionally answers back with signals no known creature should be able to produce. In some regions of our oceans, equipment goes dark for exactly 11 minutes before functioning again. Perfect geometric patterns appear on sonar, only to vanish when investigators return. Lights with no source pulse with mathematical precision in waters where no light should exist. These aren't campfire stories or internet conspiracies. These are documented phenomena recorded by military vessels, research institutions, and scientific expeditions, then quietly filed away when no explanation could be found. Tonight, we're pulling back the curtain on what lurks beneath the surface of our understanding. The ocean is watching, listening, perhaps even remembering things from Earth's distant past that humanity has long forgotten. Let's begin our descent into the unknown. Hidden within our oceans lie regions where natural laws seem suspended and reality distorts. Sonar fails without explanation. Radar returns nothing but static. Light behaves erratically, and even time itself flows differently. Sailors have passed down stories of these places for generations, their voices dropping to whispers. They speak of sections of open water that provoke an instinctive sense of wrongness that settles deep in your bones. Areas where sophisticated instruments malfunction without warning or cause, as if rejected by the sea itself. Nothing dramatic announces their presence. No violent storms or massive waves looming on the horizon. Instead, an unnatural stillness descends, so profound it creates a visceral discomfort that's impossible to shake. These anomalous regions are known in hushed tones as shadow zones, and their most disturbing characteristic is their apparent mobility. They shift locations unpredictably, or perhaps our understanding of how to locate them is fundamentally flawed. In one documented case, a deep-sea exploration drone near the Mid-Atlantic Ridge ceased all transmissions without warning or explanation. No power failure was detected, no mechanical malfunction identified. Its signal simply terminated as if it had never existed. When a recovery vessel reached the drone's last recorded position, they found nothing unusual, just open ocean under clear skies, with no explanation for the drone's disappearance into the void. Maritime professionals often describe shadow zones as acoustic dead spots, regions where sound waves behave in inexplicable ways that defy our understanding. Underwater acoustics experts understand that ocean waters can distort and channel sound in complex patterns, creating natural illusions. Yet sometimes these sound waves vanish completely, as if consumed by the water itself, leaving only silence behind. The phenomenon extends beyond acoustics. Both military and research submarines report entering regions where all communications abruptly cease, only to resume minutes later with equipment functioning perfectly. These disruptions leave no trace in the systems, like slipping momentarily into a pocket of absolute silence that erases all evidence of its existence. A U.S. Navy sonar operator described a particularly unsettling experience during routine patrol duties that haunts them still. Their monitoring system, typically displaying constant activity from marine life, vessel movements, and seafloor reflections, suddenly displayed nothing but emptiness. Not merely quiet, absolutely vacant, as if reality itself had been erased. No echoes returned, no signals registered, as if the surrounding ocean had simply ceased to exist. This condition persisted for exactly 11 minutes before everything returned to normal without explanation. There was no logical cause, no rational explanation that could comfort those who witnessed it. The term shadow zone isn't official. You won't find it marked on marine charts or mentioned in navigation warnings. There are no cautionary beacons or designated hazard zones to mark their presence. But among long-distance naval crews and commercial shipping professionals, the term surfaces more frequently than anyone might expect. These zones appear with disturbing regularity in the South Atlantic, certain regions of the Pacific near the Tonga Trench, and several areas off Greenland's coast. What's particularly strange is that these zones don't always affect the ocean's surface. A ship might pass directly above one without incident, while anything below approximately 200 meters enters this mysterious interference. Those who have ventured into these depths report consistent experiences that defy explanation. Their depth gauges momentarily fail, compasses spin wildly or freeze completely, and the surrounding water becomes unnaturally still. Sometimes they experience pressure changes that contradict their depth readings, as if space itself were compressed or expanded. Some researchers attribute these phenomena to underwater thermoclines, sudden temperature shifts that can bend sonar signals and confuse sensitive instruments. Others suggest magnetic anomalies, underwater gas vents, or subtle fault lines might be responsible for these disturbances. Yet none of these explanations account for the consistency of the experiences or the unsettling feeling that accompanies them. Here's the aspect most difficult to quantify with data or measurements: the profound emotional impact. Many who've passed through these regions, trained divers, experienced submersible pilots, even seasoned marine biologists, describe an overwhelming sensation of being observed, not by any creature or entity they could identify, but by a presence that permeates the water around them. This presence feels neither malevolent nor benevolent, simply there, watching in perfect silence. One diver compared the sensation to walking into an ancient cathedral at night, enclosed, quiet, but unmistakably occupied, as if something vast and incomprehensible shared the space with you, just beyond the reach of perception. Over the years, researchers have attempted to correlate known shadow zone locations with geological features that might explain their existence. They've examined tectonic plate boundaries, geothermal vent fields, and magnetic anomalies, searching for patterns. But the data refuses to align in any meaningful way that would satisfy scientific scrutiny. Some of the most perplexing reports come from areas that are geologically unremarkable and should be completely ordinary. Flat seabeds with no trenches, no thermal vents, nothing that could distort energy or light. Yet the distortion occurs nonetheless. In 2018, researchers deploying autonomous underwater vehicles near the Puerto Rico Trench documented one of the most compelling shadow zone events on record. 3 vehicles operating in perfect synchronization, all experienced positioning system failures within the same 60-second window. Their internal clocks, calibrated to millisecond precision, suddenly showed a discrepancy of nearly 11 minutes. When retrieved and examined, no damage was found, no data corruption detected. The systems restarted perfectly. Yet that time gap remained unexplained, hovering like a question no one could answer. The logs showed a complete absence of data. The vehicles hadn't moved, hadn't recorded anything, yet time had unquestionably passed. There were no recordings, no visual footage, nothing but absolute silence where data should have been. This raises a darker question that haunts marine researchers in their quieter moments of doubt. If these zones can mute light, sound, and data so completely, what else might they be concealing from us? Could entire sections of the ocean floor remain hidden, not because of their depth, but because of these properties that repel observation? Might something dwell within these silent pockets, adapted to exist just beyond our ability to detect or understand it? Could entities reside there, aware of our brief attempts to observe them, but remaining just beyond our reach? We comfort ourselves with the belief that we've mapped our oceans completely, that satellites and sonar have eliminated all unknowns. Yet the uncomfortable truth remains that over 80% of the ocean floor remains unmapped and unexplored. These shadow zones, whatever their true nature, might explain why our knowledge remains so limited despite our technological advancement. Perhaps they hide, or perhaps they are themselves hidden by forces we cannot yet comprehend. Some researchers maintain these are merely natural phenomena, nothing more than acoustic anomalies and temperature variations, playing tricks on our instruments and senses. Others entertain the possibility that something ancient still dwells in Earth's deep waters, something that actively resists discovery. Or perhaps it isn't alive at all, in any way we understand life. Maybe the ocean simply contains spaces where reality itself shifts, where our tools and understanding fail us completely. Whatever the explanation, one certainty remains undisputed among those who study the deep. Shadow zones are real, documented phenomena that defy our current scientific understanding. We don't know how they function or form. We cannot predict their locations with any consistency. And most unsettling of all, we have no way of knowing what, if anything, might exist within their boundaries. Sometimes silence isn't peaceful. It's a boundary marking something beyond our understanding. And just beyond that boundary of perception, something might be waiting, watching as we approach and retreat, time after time. Beneath the Atlantic Ocean lies a communication cable that once connected continents and helped shape our modern world. It was installed in the late 1800s during humanity's earliest efforts to span the ocean floor with telegraph and telephone lines. Most of these historic cables now lie dormant, their purpose served. Some have snapped under immense pressure, others abandoned as newer fiber optic technology replaced them. But a few remain undisturbed, lost beneath sediment and time, forgotten by the world above. And one of these forgotten cables still produces signals when it should be silent. In February 2003, during a routine survey conducted by marine engineers, unusual electromagnetic pulses were detected emanating from an inactive section of transatlantic cable. This cable had been dormant for decades, disconnected from any power source, serving no function. Yet somehow, impossibly, it was transmitting something into the darkness. Initially, researchers dismissed the signals as interference, perhaps distant lightning strikes or seismic activity, creating false readings. But the patterns defied these explanations, showing too much structure and regularity to be random oceanic noise. Every 11 minutes, a short burst of low-frequency pulses would emerge, followed by silence. Then again, with perfect timing, the same interval, the same tone, the same rhythm would repeat endlessly like clockwork. They reviewed their logs, checked other instruments, and verified their findings multiple times. It wasn't an error or malfunction. Something somewhere was interacting with this abandoned line. Not an electrical current, not marine life, not any known equipment could explain these regular pulses. Intrigued by this impossibility, they deployed a small ROV to inspect the cable segment where the signal appeared strongest. The cable itself appeared perfectly intact, showing no visible damage or unusual characteristics. No marine growth or incrustation could account for the energy signature they were detecting. It simply rested there on the seafloor, motionless and dust-covered, like a wire forgotten in an abandoned home. Yet the ROV's sensitive microphone detected something extraordinary that sent chills through the research team. Not the electromagnetic signal itself, but an audible sound accompanying it, a faint, rhythmic clicking that shouldn't exist. The sound wasn't mechanical or natural, repeating in the exact same 11-minute interval as the electromagnetic pulses. It resembled Morse code but followed no known pattern or language human analysts could decipher. One analyst described the phenomenon with unsettling clarity. It's as if something's tapping on the line from the other end, but there's no other end. This old segment of cable connected to nothing. It terminated in deep water thousands of meters down, where no station or repeater existed. No connection, no power source, just the vast, empty seafloor, stretching into darkness. In the years that followed, researchers attempted to recreate and understand this phenomenon with increasingly sophisticated equipment. They brought in electromagnetic monitors, hydrophones, and subsurface mapping tools, searching for answers. Nothing conclusive emerged despite their best efforts and most advanced technology. The pulses would vanish for weeks, then suddenly return unchanged and unexplained. Always the same strength, always the same timing, following no discernible pattern tied to weather, currents, or seismic activity. The source remained stubbornly unidentified, despite extensive investigation. Some theorized that trapped gas pockets beneath the seafloor might be releasing energy, triggering faint magnetic shifts. But this couldn't explain the precise intervals that never varied by even a second. Others proposed that a sunken ship or lost device might have come to rest against the cable, creating some form of contact. Yet no wreckage was ever discovered despite thorough searches of the surrounding area. One research team suggested the cable itself might have formed a kind of resonant electromagnetic loop, a natural echo chamber of energy. But if this were true, why would it begin decades after the cable had fallen silent, and why maintain such perfect timing? And then came the strangest discovery that defied all conventional explanation. During one deep-sea survey, a secondary cable located 13 nautical miles away, one never connected to the first, began producing an identical pulse. It perfectly mimicked the same 11-minute interval, as if responding to some unseen signal. This continued for several days before vanishing again, without explanation. There were no faults, no signs of tampering, no logical reason for this synchronized behavior between unconnected cables. Some engineers joked nervously that the sea itself was placing calls through our abandoned infrastructure. But a few researchers began to consider a more unsettling possibility that haunted their thoughts. What if the signal isn't originating from the cable but merely passing through it from elsewhere? What if this piece of forgotten technology, buried and abandoned, is being utilized by something that knows of its existence? Not by humans, not by any known transmitter, but by something that recognizes these metal pathways and knows how to access them. There's no evidence of intelligence in the signal, no decipherable message or meaningful variation. Just the same simple pattern repeating with mechanical precision like a beacon in the darkness. But sometimes, simplicity proves more unsettling than complexity when examining the unexplained. It suggests intention, a deliberate, patient presence, tapping out the same note in the darkness, year after year, not attempting communication, not seeking response, just reminding us of its continued existence. Some fringe theorists believe the signal represents a kind of beacon or marker placed long ago for purposes we cannot comprehend. Others suggest it might be an echo of something that once lived or passed through these depths, leaving an energetic imprint. Whatever generates these pulses, it isn't broadcasting randomly, it's responding to something we cannot detect. Responding to what, exactly? We don't know, and perhaps never will. What makes this phenomenon particularly eerie isn't just the sound itself, but humanity's response to it. No one has bothered to retrieve this cable from the ocean floor, despite its inexplicable behavior. It remains where it has rested for decades, deep in darkness like a forgotten wire stretching into silence. And every 11 minutes without fail, it clicks as if something remembers what we've forgotten. Off the Indonesian coast, beyond the horizon, where calm blue waves disguise the depths below, lies a massive underwater canyon. This long, deep wound in the seafloor is known as the Java Trench, sometimes called the Sunda Trench by those who study it. It stretches for over 3,000 kilometers and plunges more than 7,000 meters into the Earth's crust. It ranks among the deepest parts of the Indian Ocean and remains one of our planet's least explored underwater features. Few ships venture there without specific purpose, yet for years, something has been heard in its lightless depths. Not the expected rumblings of tectonic movement or underwater landslides, but echoes, rhythmic, mechanical sounds that resemble metal scraping against metal. These sounds register too low for human ears to detect naturally, but have been captured by hydrophones placed along the trench floor. And these sounds don't occur once or randomly, they follow regular cycles that suggest pattern and purpose. In 2012, during a collaborative marine seismic survey, researchers logged an unusual signal deep within the trench. It matched no known geological activity or natural phenomenon they could identify. It wasn't a whale call, not a ship engine's distant rumble, not the familiar snapping sounds of crustaceans or small fish. It was something entirely different. A slow, pulsing sound, almost like a heavy chain being dragged across metal plating. The sound would repeat, pause briefly, then repeat again with perfect consistency. Then came the reports from divers working near the trench's outer slopes, where the seafloor begins its dramatic descent. Several Indonesian Navy divers, performing routine maintenance checks, reported hearing strange sounds underwater that defied explanation. The sounds weren't loud or intrusive, just persistently present, always seeming to originate from behind them. Always just out of sight, always beyond reach, no matter which direction they turned. One diver, who requested anonymity in official reports, described it as the sound of someone pacing far away, steady and deliberate. Another swore he heard breathing underwater, slow, deep, regular respirations that didn't match his own oxygen consumption. When he surfaced and removed his diving gear, the sound vanished completely. When he descended again, it returned immediately, as if waiting for him. The equipment showed nothing unusual, and the dive logs recorded no anomalies, yet the sounds continued to be reported by multiple divers. Never aggressive, never overwhelming, just constantly present like a patient observer. In 2015, an autonomous underwater vehicle was deployed into the trench to gather temperature and seismic data from its depths. Halfway through its programmed dive, the vehicle's onboard microphone recorded what researchers later described as a vocalized metallic resonance. The sound resembled speech patterns, not language, exactly, but definite rhythm and intonation like humming or distant conversation. Audio experts in bioacoustics, marine geology, and artificial signal processing analyzed the recordings extensively. None could match it to any known natural or mechanical source in our oceans. Not a fish, not a mammal, not a machine, or human-made device could have produced these sounds. The audio didn't repeat exactly like a mechanical process would. It wasn't perfectly uniform. Yet it wasn't random either, following patterns too consistent to be coincidental, but too varied to be simple mechanical repetition. The recording was labeled Unclassified Anomaly and quietly archived away from public attention. Some researchers suggest natural resonance could explain these sounds. The trench is deep, and sound behaves strangely under extreme pressure. Sound waves can echo, bend, and bounce back in unusual ways through water of varying densities and temperatures. But the frequency patterns and rhythmic nature of these sounds don't align with any known acoustic models of natural phenomena. Others point to undisclosed human activity as a potential source, perhaps military submarines or experimental deep-sea technology. This explanation seems plausible until you realize these sounds had been reported for decades, even before modern technology could reach such depths. And then there are the stories passed down through generations that predate scientific exploration entirely. Fishermen in coastal villages near the trench have long avoided certain parts of the sea, not because of storms or practical dangers, They avoid these waters because, as they say with complete conviction, the water listens when you sail above certain depths. It's an ancient saying repeated in local coastal communities for longer than anyone can remember. Some dismiss it as mere superstition or cultural storytelling. Others recognize it as a warning based on experiences too consistent to ignore across generations of seafarers. There's a belief in this region that something ancient sleeps within the trench's darkest depths. Not a monster from children's stories, not a god from mythology, but a presence too old to be understood by human minds. Something too deep to surface. Something that stirs only when disturbed by vibration or sound. Something that answers sound with sound, mimicking what it hears from above. This brings us back to the echoes that continue to puzzle researchers and haunt those who have heard them firsthand. If something is answering our sounds, what exactly is listening to our unintentional calls? One particularly strange incident occurred in 2019 that defies conventional explanation. A research vessel in the area was broadcasting low-frequency pulses into the trench as part of a standard mapping operation. This common technique involves sending a signal downward, receiving its echo, and using the return data to construct a detailed profile of the seafloor. But this time, something echoed back that wasn't a simple reflection of their original signal. Not once, but 3 times at precisely 11-second intervals, a new pattern returned from the depths. One sonar analyst described the experience with unsettling clarity. We knocked on the wall, and something knocked back. Not aggressively, not loudly, just a gentle acknowledgement of our presence, as if letting us know we have been noticed. That signal was carefully logged and analyzed, but has never been detected again, despite repeated attempts. Like all the strange occurrences surrounding the Java Trench, it remains unexplained by conventional science. Perhaps it's nothing extraordinary. Perhaps the ocean is simply playing tricks through complex physical properties we don't fully understand. Perhaps the Earth itself moves in ways our current scientific models haven't yet captured or explained. But in the deep dark trench, where no sunlight has ever reached in all of Earth's history, echoes continue to return. Not from our machines, not from our instruments, but from something else that waits in silence. Something that listens, responds, and then falls silent until the next time we unknowingly call out to it. In the waters of the Bahamas, just east of Andros Island, there's a trench unlike any other in the region. It's not the world's deepest or widest underwater canyon, nor is it the most studied by mainstream science. Yet it holds a special reputation among those who work beneath the waves. Divers, submariners, and marine researchers speak of it differently. This reputation spreads not through official reports or academic papers, but through conversations among those who have experienced it firsthand. They call it, with a mixture of respect and unease, the tongue of the ocean. This formation stretches approximately 150 kilometers, shaped like a long, narrow corridor carved into the seafloor as if by design. On either side lie shallow, crystal-clear turquoise waters, vibrant coral reefs, and sunlight that dances just below the surface. But once you cross the edge of this underwater canyon, the seafloor drops suddenly and dramatically, thousands of meters down into darkness. There's no gradual slope or gentle descent, just a sharp vertical plunge into black water that seems to swallow all light. From above, it resembles a massive bite taken out of the Earth's crust by some colossal entity. For reasons scientists haven't fully explained, the tongue of the ocean behaves differently from surrounding waters in ways that defy conventional understanding. Sound travels strangely here, following paths it shouldn't, according to standard acoustic models. It bounces at unexpected angles, lingers when it should dissipate, creates echoes where there should be none. Submarines conducting tests in this region have documented that sonar signals behave inconsistently and unpredictably within these waters. Sometimes signals travel much further than they should, according to established physical models. Other times they vanish completely, absorbed by something that leaves no trace or return. One report from a 1997 naval trial described a ghost ping, a sonar return that arrived without any signal being sent. No explanation was ever found despite extensive investigation and equipment checks. The trench is also unnaturally quiet, as if something absorbs sound that should echo through its depths. Marine biologists studying dolphin and whale communication have discovered that the tongue of the ocean functions like an acoustic isolation chamber. Calls made inside the trench remain contained within its boundaries, absorbed or scattered before reaching the surface. Creatures outside cannot hear what happens below, creating a zone of perfect acoustic privacy. Sometimes even creatures within the trench cannot hear each other clearly, as if the water itself selectively muffles certain frequencies. It's as if the physical properties of water change within this boundary, dampening sound in ways that serve some unknown purpose. Divers report the same phenomenon with remarkable consistency, despite having no knowledge of others' experiences. The moment they descend past a certain depth, the entire soundscape transforms around them without warning. Everything becomes muffled and distant, creating an unsettling sense of isolation. Their own breathing bubbles sound far away, as if coming from someone else. Their equipment feels heavier, not from increased water pressure, but from the profound silence that seems to have physical weight. One diver participating in a scientific expedition described the sensation with disturbing clarity. It felt like I was falling even though I wasn't moving. The light above was still visible, but everything felt too still, too separate, as if I'd crossed into somewhere else. In February 2001, a deep-sea probe malfunctioned while descending into the trench despite being engineered for extreme depths. It was pressure-resistant, battery-powered, and equipped with redundant systems to ensure reliability. Yet 23 minutes into its programmed descent, all data transmission abruptly ceased, without warning. Recovery teams eventually retrieved the probe and found its outer shell completely undamaged, showing no signs of pressure failure. The batteries remained fully charged, all systems physically intact, yet the internal memory had been completely wiped clean. No files, no logs, no data whatsoever remained, as if the device had never been used or activated. That same year, an audio experiment designed to record marine mammal communication picked up an unexplained signal at precisely 2000 a.m. A single tone, flat, constant, unwavering, at a frequency no known sea creature could produce, according to our current understanding. It lasted exactly 47 seconds, before stopping as suddenly as it had begun. The recording underwent extensive analysis, filtering, and enhancement by multiple independent laboratories. What remained after processing was a single pure-pitch, unmodulated, unchanging, almost like a perfectly calibrated tuning fork, struck once. But this sound originated from a depth where no human instrument existed, and no known creature could generate such a pure tone. And then there are the disappearances that occur with disturbing regularity in these waters. Small submersibles, autonomous gliders, and seafloor mapping devices designed to navigate ocean terrain have occasionally vanished without explanation. Sometimes these missing devices reappeared days later, discovered miles off their programmed course, with no mechanical explanation for their deviation. Other times they're never recovered at all, joining countless other objects swallowed by the depths. Researchers are careful not to speculate publicly about these incidents, maintaining professional detachment in official reports. But among those who've worked near the trench, there's an unspoken understanding that transcends scientific caution. The tongue of the ocean isn't merely a geological formation, it's a boundary between known and unknown realms. Not a physical barrier you can touch, but a perceptual shift that alters how reality behaves within its influence. Something about the trench's unique shape, the way sound and pressure interact within its boundaries, creates an environment that feels deliberately separated from the rest of our ocean. Not hostile to human presence, not welcoming either, simply set apart, as if designated for another purpose. Some researchers quietly believe the trench conceals something beneath its floor, that its acoustic isolation isn't accidental but functional. Like a lid designed to contain something, or insulation created to keep the inside quiet and the outside world unaware of what dwells below. There's also a pattern noticed in a handful of classified reports that rarely reaches public knowledge. Bioluminescent organisms behave differently inside the trench compared to identical species found elsewhere in the ocean. Creatures that naturally produce light in other marine environments often fail to illuminate within these boundaries. It's as if something about the conditions suppresses their natural responses, shutting down biological processes that should function normally. No one has determined why this happens, despite multiple studies attempting to solve this biological mystery. What's most unsettling about the tongue of the ocean is its apparent ability to change over time. Detailed maps created from sonar surveys in 1985 do not match those made in 2005, despite using more advanced, accurate technology. Not in ways that suggest normal erosion or sediment movement, but in the fundamental outline of the trench itself. It appears to have stretched further in certain directions, its contours shifting subtly but measurably. Angles once sharply defined now appear curved and smooth, as if the very shape is slowly transforming. Of course, underwater mapping has technological limitations and margins of error that could explain these discrepancies. But what if it isn't the maps that are wrong? What if the trench itself is gradually changing shape through some unknown process? For now, the tongue of the ocean remains relatively unstudied compared to other marine features. It isn't a major shipping route or tourist destination, drawing little attention from those who allocate research funding. It exists as a long, deep groove in the Earth's crust that seems designed to avoid notice, to slip beneath our attention. And perhaps that's what makes it so profoundly strange to those who have experienced its depth firsthand. In a world where coastlines and ocean floors are thoroughly mapped and monitored, the tongue of the ocean reminds us that some parts of our world still control their own narrative. They decide what we can hear. They determine what remains hidden from human knowledge, perhaps indefinitely. It was first documented by pure chance in 2014 when an ordinary event became extraordinary without warning. A cargo ship crossing the eastern Indian Ocean noticed something strange off the port side that defied explanation. A glowing pattern had appeared in the water, not the familiar patches of brightness caused by common bioluminescent algae. Not the streaks of disturbed plankton that often trail behind ships moving through warm waters. This was a spiral, a massive, slowly rotating spiral of pale blue light stretching for kilometers across the ocean's surface. Each arm of this luminous pattern curled gently inward, circling a dimmer, dark center with perfect symmetry. The crew watched in silence as their vessel passed near this impossible phenomenon, struggling to comprehend what they were witnessing. The spiral didn't move toward them or react to their presence. It didn't break apart or dissipate like normal bioluminescence would when disturbed by a ship's wake. It simply continued turning slowly, steadily, like a vast glowing wheel etched into the sea's surface by some unseen hand. No one aboard could explain what they were seeing, despite years of collective maritime experience. Photos were taken, and a short video recorded as evidence, though the distance made the footage less dramatic than the actual sight. Just distant points of light captured by cameras ill-equipped for night photography, but the spiral pattern remained unmistakable. When marine scientists first examined these images, they responded with professional skepticism as scientific protocol demands. They suggested it might be a trick of perspective, reflected moonlight, or a coincidental arrangement of currents and glowing organisms. Their skepticism remained until it happened again, forcing a reevaluation of what was possible in our oceans. 2 years later, in the South China Sea, another vessel documented an identical formation that couldn't be dismissed. This time the evidence came from above, captured by a passing surveillance satellite with high-resolution imaging capabilities. The same spiral shape appeared, dozens of kilometers wide, composed of the same ethereal blue glow, the same rotational movement, always counterclockwise, always maintaining its perfect geometric structure. Bioluminescence itself isn't uncommon in our oceans. Certain plankton and bacteria emit light when disturbed by movement. Some fish produce their own light to attract prey or confuse predators in the darkness of deep water. But bioluminescent organisms don't organize themselves into perfect spirals across such vast scales. They don't maintain geometric symmetry that spans kilometers of open ocean. They don't move with the deliberate, mechanical precision these spirals displayed. Some scientists propose that the spiral represents a rare convergence of natural forces working in harmony. Perhaps currents, wind patterns, surface temperatures, and microbial blooms combined in just the right way to create a temporary, visible pattern. Others suggested a resonance event might explain the phenomenon, an interaction between undersea vibrations and light-producing organisms. But even these theories couldn't account for the mathematical precision displayed in these formations. In 2019, an unmanned aerial drone was deployed to investigate one of these spirals forming in the Mozambique Channel. The drone carried sophisticated equipment, high-definition cameras, hydrophones, and sensors designed to measure particles in the water. It captured footage from directly inside the spiral, revealing details invisible from greater distances. Here's what the data showed. The glow wasn't uniform as it appeared from afar, but pulsed very slowly. Each pulse occurred approximately every 14 seconds, with metronomic regularity. The water temperature inside the spiral measured 1.3 degrees warmer than the surrounding ocean, with no apparent heat source. And strangest of all, inside the spiral, sound itself behaved differently than it should, according to known physics. The drone's sensitive hydrophones detected a faint oscillating tone unlike anything in their comparative databases. Not mechanical, not biological, just present, as if the spiral itself were humming. When researchers reviewed all collected data, they couldn't identify any specific organisms responsible for the light production. Plankton existed in the water, but appeared in no higher concentrations than surrounding areas. No large marine animals, no unusual chemical reactions, nothing but ordinary seawater arranged in a pattern that defied natural explanation. A few marine theorists began considering a radical possibility that would reshape our understanding of ocean phenomena. What if the spiral isn't created by living organisms at all? What if the light is a reaction to something deeper, something beneath the seafloor? What if something we can't detect is pushing up through the water column, causing biological material to emit light in a pattern? Almost like heat rising through fog, revealing its presence only through its effect on the surrounding medium. This led to the hypothesis that these spirals might indicate something beneath the ocean floor, not tectonic plates or magma flows, something science hasn't classified or understood, a kind of natural signal that appears only when conditions align perfectly. Something older than human memory, something that was never meant to be witnessed except through rare coincidence. The most compelling case occurred in 2022, when a Japanese research vessel captured an entire spiral event from beginning to end. The formation process unfolded over approximately 4 hours, not instantly as might be expected from a sudden current change. Slowly, methodically, points of light emerged one by one, not all at once, but in sequence like stars appearing at dusk. Then these points began to curve and align themselves, forming the arms of the spiral with deliberate precision. A complete spiral formed, rotated for just under 3 hours, and then began a gradual dissolution. At the center, for one brief moment lasting only 7 seconds, a column of darkness appeared. A circular absence where light refused to penetrate, a perfect black disk at the heart of the glowing pattern. Then this void vanished, and the spiral began to dissolve and fade from the outside inward. No sound, no seismic event, no external cause could be detected, just a vanishing, geometric shape. Some researchers insist it's merely a natural phenomenon we don't yet understand, a convergence of factors creating an optical illusion. Others suggest it represents something more significant, a pulse from the Earth itself, a pattern meant to be noticed by anyone fortunate enough to witness it under the right conditions. The ocean contains countless organisms capable of producing light, but light itself isn't difficult to explain scientifically. Patterns, however, especially mathematically precise ones, require organization and purpose. And in a sea governed by chaos and random movement, perfect spirals represent order that shouldn't exist without direction. Perhaps this order isn't random coincidence after all. Maybe something beneath the ocean's surface periodically makes itself visible through the only means available to it. And maybe this is the only language it has to communicate its existence to those who happen to be watching when it speaks. Far out in the middle of the Indian Ocean, isolated from busy shipping lanes and tourist destinations, lies a remote atoll called Diego Garcia. Officially, it's classified as part of the British Indian Ocean Territory on international maps. In reality, it functions as a heavily restricted military base closed to civilians and surrounded by secrecy. Beyond the atoll's shallow edges lies a reef unlike any other on our planet. Long, uneven, and razor-sharp, it stretches down into deeper water like a submerged ledge guarding the island. Very little information about this reef appears in scientific literature or public oceanographic surveys. Few civilian divers have explored its features, and those who have rarely discussed their experiences openly. But among a small circle of researchers with proper clearance, this formation has earned a name that appears in no official documents. They call it the Silent Reef, and this name isn't poetic flourish, but literal description, because for reasons no one can satisfactorily explain, this reef doesn't echo. When sonar is used in normal ocean conditions, signals bounce back predictably based on physical properties we understand. This principle allows ships to map the seafloor, helps submarines navigate safely, and enables researchers to identify marine life. But in this particular section of reef, sonar signals behave in ways that violate these established principles. They don't return at expected strength, creating distorted, faint images on monitoring equipment. Sometimes they don't return at all, as if the reef simply absorbs sound rather than reflecting it back. This anomaly was first documented in the late 1970s during routine naval exercises near Diego Garcia. A submarine sent out standard sonar pulses to map the underwater terrain as part of navigation protocol. The resulting map contained a blank section where the reef should have appeared, not because nothing existed there, because the reef itself somehow muted the signal, preventing normal echo return. Follow-up missions revealed identical results despite equipment checks and recalibration. More detailed surveys eventually mapped the reef's basic shape using alternative methods and approaches. But the acoustic anomaly remained unexplained and consistent across decades of monitoring. Hydrophones placed throughout the area successfully detected ambient ocean noise from distant sources. They picked up ship traffic from miles away and even registered whale calls from far offshore. But near the reef itself, these same instruments recorded nothing but silence. No clicks from reef fish, no bubbling currents, no snapping sounds from crustaceans. No sound whatsoever, registered on equipment calibrated to detect even the faintest underwater noises. Just perfect, complete silence that defies everything we know about underwater acoustics. In 1993, a civilian marine biology team received rare limited access to study coral biodiversity near the atoll. They weren't briefed about the acoustic anomaly before their expedition began. Yet after only 2 preliminary dives, they independently reported that the reef felt unnaturally quiet compared to other sites. One diver described the experience in their personal journal. It felt like the water itself was holding its breath. When they attempted to record sound samples using specialized underwater microphones, their equipment captured only static. Pure white noise filled their recordings as if something was actively blocking or scrambling the input. Only when they moved approximately 300 meters away from the reef did their microphones begin functioning normally again. No electrical interference was detected in their equipment. No damage to the sensitive hydrophones could explain the phenomena. Just silence that seemed to radiate from the reef itself, creating a bubble of acoustic emptiness. Later, an oceanographer proposed that the reef's unique physical shape and mineral composition might somehow absorb or scatter sound waves. This natural acoustic dampening effect could theoretically explain the phenomenon in scientific terms. But core samples revealed the structure consists of standard limestone and coral formations, identical to countless other reefs. No exotic materials, no unusual mineral concentrations, nothing that could account for its acoustic properties. No other reef on Earth behaves this way, despite similar compositions being common throughout our oceans. There's also the curious matter of the water surrounding this formation. Divers consistently report that the water directly above the reef exhibits unusual clarity compared to nearby areas. This exceptional visibility isn't due to less sediment in the water, as might be expected. It occurs because there's less water movement, currents slow down dramatically within this zone. Particles seem to settle more quickly, creating water that isn't just acoustically quiet, but physically still. In 2008, a classified joint study between marine physicists and acoustic engineers proposed a new theory. The reef might represent only the visible portion of a larger, deeper phenomenon. Far beneath the visible crust of coral, they suggested, lies a geological structure capable of dampening or redirecting sound waves. But attempts to locate this hypothetical structure encountered the same problem that initiated the investigation. Ground-penetrating sonar fails in exactly the same way as surface scanning. It reaches a certain depth and then vanishes into static. One researcher described the reef as a hole in the ocean's memory, a place where sound disappears without echo, where data goes missing without explanation, where instruments detect nothing when something should clearly register. Yet despite these strange properties, the reef isn't biologically dead or dormant. Coral polyps still live and grow across its surface, continuing their slow, ancient processes. Microscopic organisms thrive within its countless crevices, just as they do on normal reefs. Small fish move through its structure, finding shelter among its branching formations. But even these fish behave differently according to divers who have observed them closely. They don't scatter when approached by humans as reef fish typically do. They don't dart away in quick flashing movements or signal to each other with normal patterns. They move slowly, quietly, almost methodically, as if they've adapted to the stillness and become part of it. No predatory fish have ever been documented hunting within this zone despite abundant prey. No dolphins, no sharks, nothing larger than certain small reef species seems to enter this area. It's as if something keeps them away, an invisible barrier only they can sense. And then there's the final detail reported independently by two separate divers years apart with no knowledge of each other's experiences. At the reef's deepest point, just before the seafloor drops away into the abyss, there's a formation unlike the rest. Not coral, not natural rock formation, but something smooth and curved, almost like an arch partially buried in silt. Covered in algae and sediment, it shows no markings or identifying features. Just a long, bowed surface that appears to be part of something once larger, now mostly hidden beneath the seafloor. Neither diver was permitted to excavate or investigate further despite their scientific credentials. When they later requested permission to return for proper documentation, the area was suddenly classified as off-limits. The official explanation cited a sensitive marine ecosystem requiring protection, a designation applied nowhere else in the region. Divers with extensive experience throughout the Indian Ocean consistently report that Diego Garcia's reef feels fundamentally different from all others. Not sacred, not threatening, just sealed off in some way that transcends physical boundaries. Sound doesn't function here, according to known physical laws. And perhaps that reveals the reef's true nature, not a barrier made of coral and stone, but a boundary made of silence itself, hiding something beneath layers of stillness. Because our ocean world consists of constant voices and sounds, an endless symphony of life and movement. And this remains the only place where none of these voices can be heard, regardless of how carefully we listen. Far below the southern tip of our world, beyond Antarctica's jagged ice cliffs, the ocean moves differently than anywhere else on Earth. It doesn't crash and surge with dramatic surface waves, but turns slowly, vastly in a rotation, so immense and silent it escapes ordinary human attention. This is the Weddell Gyre, a massive circular current system, trapped between Antarctica's Weddell Sea and the surrounding Southern Ocean. It ranks among our planet's most powerful oceanic circulation systems, spanning thousands of kilometers and eternally turning cold water, salt, and ancient sediment in a slow, endless spiral. Unlike other major gyres found in the Pacific or Atlantic, the Weddell Gyre rarely reveals itself to surface observation. It moves beneath the ice, hidden by storms and perpetual darkness at the bottom of the world. It leaves no visible signature on the surface that satellites can easily track. It leaves nothing that betrays its existence to casual observers. And that invisibility represents part of its profound mystery, because within this great hidden whirlpool, things vanish without explanation. Oceanographers routinely use drifting buoys to measure ocean gyres, sophisticated devices designed to float with currents while transmitting GPS coordinates and temperature data. But within the Weddell Gyre, a disturbing pattern emerged over decades of research. Buoys entering the gyre frequently stopped transmitting altogether, not because of mechanical failure or battery depletion. They simply disappeared from tracking systems as if they'd ceased to exist. Some reappeared months later, thousands of kilometers away from their last known position, far from where any known current could have carried them within that time frame, according to our understanding of ocean movements. Others never surfaced again, joining countless objects swallowed by this rotating mass of water. As one senior researcher described it with scientific understatement, the gyre swallows data. Temperature anomalies represent another perplexing aspect of this massive current system that defies explanation. The surface waters of the Weddell Gyre rank among Earth's coldest, perpetually near freezing. But deep within its center, at the lowest layers, ocean probes have detected intermittent pockets of unexpected warmth. Not boiling or volcanic, just subtle, sustained heat that appears to pulse upward from the ocean floor without apparent source. This heat signature proves inconsistent. It fades away completely, then returns weeks or months later. Sometimes the warmth persists for days, sometimes for months, without explanation. When scientists attempted to identify a geothermal source for this heat, they found nothing that could account for it. No volcanic activity, no tectonic fracture, no hydrothermal vents, just heat emerging without cause from the coldest waters on Earth. And the mysteries compound further with each new study of this remote region. In 1998, a group of autonomous undersea gliders, deployed into the Weddell Sea to collect salinity data, encountered an inexplicable delay. These sophisticated instruments were programmed to surface and transmit collected data every 12 hours with precision timing. Instead, several units went completely silent for over 2 days, causing serious concern among researchers monitoring the mission. When they finally resurfaced and transmitted their data, their internal clocks showed significant discrepancies. They were delayed by up to 7 hours compared to mission control timekeeping, despite being synchronized before deployment. It was as if time itself had passed differently inside the gyre, a phenomenon no one could explain through conventional science. No clear explanation has ever been established for these temporal anomalies, despite extensive investigation. Some researchers suggest magnetic interference might disrupt electronic systems, creating the appearance of time distortion. Others propose that interaction with the thick ice above could somehow affect instrument function in ways we don't yet understand. But none of these models adequately explain the effect or allow researchers to replicate it in controlled conditions. And still the gyre turns, silent and mostly invisible, except to those specifically studying its movements. It's often described in scientific literature as stable and predictable, cold, circular, and constant. But there's another aspect, rarely discussed in formal research papers or presentations. Satellite images, taken over the gyre during the Antarctic night, have occasionally captured faint streaks of light beneath the ice. Long, straight bands of luminescence, too regular to be natural. Ice cracks or fissures. Not aurora australis. Not surface reflection on moonlight. Just light with no confirmed source. No formal investigation has pursued these luminous anomalies, despite their appearance in multiple satellite passes. A few researchers working on the theoretical fringes of oceanography have proposed an alternative understanding of the Weddell Gyre. They suggest it might function as a barrier or container, creating a pocket of isolated water beneath its rotating mass. A chamber untouched by sunlight or surface sediment since before recorded human history. An isolated environment preserved for millennia, perhaps containing something our modern science hasn't classified. And if something dwells within this protected pocket, something alive or ancient, might have remained completely isolated from the outside world. This theory receives little attention in mainstream scientific circles for obvious reasons, but those who have worked near the gyre often speak of it differently in private conversations. They describe how instruments malfunction without explanation when deployed in certain areas, how weather patterns change suddenly without meteorological cause, how the sea itself feels heavier, more resistant, almost conscious when you sail above certain coordinates. One polar researcher wrote in personal notes, never intended for publication, "When you're near the Weddell Gyre, it doesn't feel like you're floating. It feels like you're being carried somewhere slowly, silently, and not in any direction you can measure on conventional instruments. What causes the intermittent warmth that shouldn't exist in Earth's coldest waters? Why does light occasionally appear beneath solid ice, where no light should penetrate? Where does the lost data go when equipment vanishes without explanation? And perhaps most unsettling, what might the gyre have been concealing throughout human history? In a world mapped with satellite precision and constant surveillance, the Weddell Gyre remains stubbornly vague and mysterious. It turns without sound, pulls without visible effort, and reminds us that not all of Earth's mysteries announce themselves dramatically. Some simply rotate in silence, waiting for someone to notice their patient, endless movement. Deep beneath the icy roof of the Arctic Ocean, hidden under crushing pressure and ancient ice sheets, lies a place few people have ever heard of and fewer still have seen with their own eyes. It's called the Lomonosov Ridge, an underwater mountain range unlike most submarine formations we've documented. It stretches approximately 1,800 kilometers from Greenland's edge all the way to Siberia, crossing the entire Arctic basin. But unlike typical underwater mountain ranges, this one doesn't connect neatly with continental shelves around it as expected. It stands apart, detached and isolated, occupying a position it shouldn't, according to standard geological models. It simply shouldn't be there, at least not in its current configuration. First discovered in the 1950s by Soviet scientists using primitive icebreakers and echo-sounding equipment, the Lomonosov Ridge initially seemed unremarkable. Just another underwater elevation, among many, spanning our ocean floors. But as decades passed and more sophisticated data emerged, a different picture began forming in the scientific community. This wasn't just a natural ridge formed by typical tectonic processes, it appeared to be a fragment of something larger. A lost piece of land, broken and submerged beneath the Arctic ice for reasons still debated. One prevailing theory suggests the Lomonosov Ridge represents the broken spine of an ancient continent, a sliver of landmass that once stood above water before sinking into Arctic depths during some forgotten cataclysm lost to time. Its rock composition differs significantly from typical oceanic crust, older, more continental in nature than surrounding seabed. This raises a disturbing question that challenges our understanding of Earth's geological history. What land once occupied this space, and what catastrophic event caused its submergence? Seafloor samples extracted from the ridge contain granite rather than basalt, typically found in oceanic crust. Granite forms the backbone of mountains and highlands, continental stone not normally present in deep ocean environments. This evidence suggests the ridge might have once existed as dry land above sea level before some transformative event. Some researchers believe it represents the last remnant of a vanished microcontinent that split from either Europe or Siberia millions of years ago. This theoretical landmass would have drifted into the Arctic before slowly sinking beneath the waves through geological processes. But there's another inconsistency that challenges even this explanation. The ridge didn't sink like a normal landmass, according to bathymetric data. It tilted dramatically, creating a significant depth differential between its ends. One section lies considerably deeper than the other, as if some massive force pushed it down with tremendous pressure. This tilting doesn't match known patterns of tectonic movement or standard continental drift. In recent years, submarines passing near the ridge have detected strange anomalies unrelated to the rocks themselves. These readings come from the water column above the formation, suggesting active processes still occurring. In several documented cases, magnetic readings near the ridge have fluctuated sharply, without explanation. These fluctuations suggest something beneath the seabed might be emitting electromagnetic pulses that our instruments can detect. In one particularly disturbing incident, quietly discussed among marine research circles, but never formally published, a sonar mapping drone made a bizarre discovery. While descending toward the ridge to conduct a standard survey, it suddenly returned with a blank strip in its mapping data. Not corrupted data or static, a perfect absence, a slice of nothingness, where seafloor should have appeared. The void took the shape of a perfect rectangle over 200 meters long, a geometric impossibility in natural formations. No one discusses this publicly in scientific forums, and the raw data remains difficult to access. The Arctic presents enormous challenges for thorough scientific investigation compared to other regions. Its environment remains hostile to human presence, dark for months at a time, and frequently locked beneath shifting ice that closes access routes without warning. Expeditions prove costly and dangerous. Equipment regularly fails under extreme conditions, and continuous study remains nearly impossible. But some researchers believe the Lomonosov Ridge represents more than just an underwater elevation or geological curiosity. They suggest it marks a boundary, a place where one kind of Earth ends and something else begins. Because surrounding the ridge, the seabed behaves unpredictably and inconsistently. Temperature profiles shift without pattern. Sediment layers appear jumbled rather than stratified as expected. And sound travels strangely, bending and distorting in ways that violate established acoustic principles. Hydrophones placed in the area have detected sounds without identifiable sources, not animal calls or seismic activity. Rhythmic pulses and echoes that match no known natural phenomena, suggesting movement beneath the ridge itself. And then there's the legend rarely mentioned in scientific circles, but persistently present in historical records. Some researchers suggest the Lomonosov Ridge might connect to ancient Greek writings about Hyperborea. This legendary Arctic land of knowledge, light, and strange energies now lies swallowed by ice and time according to myth. Mainstream science dismisses such connections as pseudo-scientific speculation, without merit. But the ridge's broken structure, its buried warmth, and its anomalous properties continue raising questions without satisfactory answers. What if our understanding of Arctic geography contains fundamental errors? What if land once existed here where we now see only ice and water? What if this land supported life, even civilization, before some cataclysmic event erased it from history? What if all that remains now is its submerged skeleton, a fragment of something intentionally forgotten? The Lomonosov Ridge doesn't announce its presence or demand our attention like volcanic islands or coastal mountains. It lies silently beneath the thickest ice, under the darkest sea, in a place sunlight never touches. But it remains there regardless, silent, cold, patient, a fragment of something Earth's history seemingly tried to erase. West of South America, beyond the bone-dry Atacama Desert, and the shifting Nazca Ridge, lies a flat stretch of deep ocean known as the Peru Basin. It spans a vast area, cold and dark, and most marine scientists have considered it unremarkable compared to more dramatic ocean features. It lacks trenches, volcanoes, or unusual geological formations that might attract specialized research. But beneath this apparent stillness, something glows that shouldn't be there, according to our understanding of marine biology. The first report emerged in 2013 from an autonomous seafloor crawler operated by a German marine research institute. The mission seemed routine, collecting sediment samples and mineral data at depths exceeding 4,000 meters in perfect darkness. As the vehicle's headlights swept across the seabed, they illuminated what appeared initially as an ordinary seafloor, brown, smooth, lifeless. Then something unexpected appeared in the camera feed. A shimmer that didn't come from the machine or its lights. The glow emanated from the floor itself. Faint but undeniable. At first, researchers thought it might be a reflection or camera artifact created by their equipment. But as the crawler moved, the light followed, proving it wasn't a simple reflection bouncing back to the camera. The light originated from the seafloor itself, a pale blue glow that defied explanation. Researchers slowed the machine and circled back to investigate this anomaly more thoroughly. The glow remained visible, steady and consistent, spreading across the sediment like luminous fog trapped beneath glass. It moved slightly with the current, but never dispersed or faded as bioluminescent organisms typically would when disturbed. The crawler's cameras captured footage that later divided the scientific team analyzing the discovery. Some dismissed it as an artifact of the lighting system, a technical glitch or reflection. Others recognized it as phosphorescence but couldn't explain its presence at such extreme depths. No known organism living at these depths produces light in this particular manner, according to our current biological understanding. When the crawler collected samples from the glowing sediment, they detected trace amounts of rare earth elements not usually found in this region. Yttrium, neodymium, and europium, substances typically associated with hydrothermal vents or undersea volcanic sites. But the Peru Basin contained neither of these features. No vents, no hotspots, no thermal signatures that might explain their presence. Just this unexplained glow without accompanying heat or obvious source. Even more disturbing was the movement observed in the phenomenon that suggested biological properties. In one segment of footage spanning 4 minutes, the glowing patch slowly contracted inward like a breathing organism. It pulsed subtly but visibly, expanding and contracting with a rhythm no current or water movement could explain. Then it stopped abruptly, the light fading completely. The crawler remained in the area for 12 additional hours, hoping to document the phenomenon again. The glow never returned during this observation period, despite constant monitoring. 2 years later, a second mission deployed to the same coordinates with enhanced sensors and a sealed biological laboratory for immediate sample analysis. When they reached the previously documented location, they found no light, just dark, barren seafloor as expected in the deep ocean. Until the final day of the expedition, when one of the secondary cameras captured something again. This time, the light wasn't pale blue, but green, fainter than the previous sighting, and behaving differently. Rather than spraying across the sediment, it rose like mist curling off the floor, defying the normal behavior of water. It formed no distinct shape, emitted no detectable heat, and moved unlike any fluid current they had observed before. Then something unprecedented occurred. The crawler's lights cut out completely. For 11 seconds, the vehicle continued transmitting data, but without visual feed, plunged into total darkness. When the lights reactivated, the mysterious glow had vanished completely without explanation. The sediment where it had appeared showed subtle differences in texture, as if disturbed from underneath rather than above. No cracks appeared, no tracks from creatures, just a smooth ripple pattern, suggesting something had pushed gently through from below. The research team recovered the crawler and analyzed the sediment samples collected during this encounter. On these samples, they discovered a strange gelatinous film, unlike anything in their reference materials. Laboratory tests confirmed it wasn't biological material or any known mineral composition. It matched nothing in scientific records or databases. One scientist described it as a skin without a body, a membrane with no apparent function or origin. Speculation proliferated among researchers studying these findings behind closed doors. Some proposed it might represent a new form of deep-sea bacteria that emits light under extreme pressure conditions. A previously undiscovered organism, potentially native only to these extreme depths and adapted to this specific environment. But no such bacteria have ever been cultured or confirmed, despite numerous attempts with the samples. Others suggested it could result from an unknown seafloor chemical reaction, a convergence of sediment, oxygen, and pressure, creating bioluminescence. But one final piece of footage continues raising questions that resist conventional scientific explanation. As the crawler ascended at the end of its final dive, one rear-facing camera captured a brief flicker far below on the basin floor. A sudden arc of light appeared, like a line drawn in glowing ink stretching momentarily across the darkness before vanishing. It appeared too deep, moved too quickly, and remained too distant to investigate before the vehicle surfaced. But it wasn't random or shapeless like natural phenomena typically are in the deep ocean. It formed a perfect curve too smooth for coincidence, too precise to have occurred naturally, without direction. What force or entity could cause the ocean floor to glow in perfect arcs, miles beneath the surface? What generates light in absolute darkness without heat, movement, or identifiable biological processes? And why does this phenomenon occur only in this specific location when similar conditions exist throughout our oceans? The Peru Basin rarely attracts attention from mainstream oceanography or popular science discussions. It lacks the dramatic appeal of volcanic trenches or mysterious shipwrecks that capture public imagination. But perhaps that's precisely why whatever causes this phenomenon remains there undisturbed. Because sometimes the most profound mysteries don't announce themselves with drama or spectacle. Sometimes they merely flicker softly in darkness, like memories struggling against oblivion. And at the bottom of the Peru Basin, that flicker waits patiently for someone to return and witness it again. Long before the North Sea existed as we know it today, before waves rolled over what we now call England and Denmark, there was land. A vast green expanse stretched, where water now flows, a world of dense forests, winding rivers, rolling hills, and fertile marshes. This land bridge connected the British Isles to mainland Europe, creating a continuous territory rich in game animals and teeming with diverse life. A connection between two landmasses that humans could walk across without seeing open water. Today, that land lies submerged beneath cold salt water, but it wasn't erased completely from Earth's memory. It remains beneath the sea, silent, buried, waiting to be rediscovered by those who know where to look. This was Doggerland, a region where modern fishing trawlers now harvest their catch, was once forest floor and meadow. Scientists believe Doggerland supported thousands of human inhabitants, Mesolithic hunter-gatherers, who fished, hunted, and migrated across this northern plain. They left behind no grand cities, no towering pyramids, no megalithic stone monuments to mark their presence. Just scattered traces, stone tools, bones, and something unexpected that challenges our understanding of prehistoric life. Paths worn into the earth itself, ancient lanes created by countless footsteps over generations. In 2018, during a routine geological survey for an offshore wind farm, researchers discovered a formation that didn't belong among natural features. Beneath layers of sediment, sonar imaging revealed long, narrow grooves cut into the ancient soil like deliberate scars. These parallel lines ran for kilometers, perfectly spaced and too regular to have formed through glacial movement or river erosion. They appeared to be made by feet, human feet, walking the same paths repeatedly over centuries before rising waters claimed the land. These weren't modern channels carved by underwater currents or trawling equipment. Carbon dating placed them over 8,000 years in the past, subtle but unmistakably deliberate. Like worn roadways or forest tracks through a landscape long since drowned beneath the cold North Sea. And they weren't randomly distributed across the former landscape as animal migration routes might be. They converged repeatedly toward a single point in the middle of what now lies under open water. A location where sonar revealed a small mound of stone beneath the mud, perhaps a natural hill, perhaps something constructed. No diver has reached this convergence point, despite multiple attempts to investigate further. The currents in this area prove brutally strong. Visibility approaches zero in the churning sediment. Even modern submersibles struggle to navigate the debris and shifting seabed that guards this ancient junction. What lies beneath that intersection point remains untouched and unexplored. More evidence continues surfacing through accidental discovery rather than planned excavation. Fishing vessels operating in these waters occasionally dredge up remnants from this lost world. Worked flint tools shaped by human hands, sharpened bones fashioned into implements, even carved wood preserved by the cold, oxygen-poor environment. One trawler recovered a single human jawbone, a direct connection to those who once walked the submerged paths. Another found the skull of a giant oryx, bearing deliberate markings made by human tools thousands of years ago. But there is something else, something that defies conventional archaeological understanding entirely. In 2021, a team monitoring acoustic signals from the seafloor detected a rhythmic thumping sound that shouldn't exist at such depths. Not mechanical in origin, not seismic activity from shifting plates, it emanated from beneath the ancient silt. One researcher described it as sounding almost like a slow heartbeat, a low, steady pulse repeating every 19 minutes with perfect regularity. This mysterious sound continued for days before stopping without explanation, leaving only questions in its wake. Some experts suggest it represents nothing more than shifting mud layers settling into new positions. Others propose the sound might come from methane gas rising from ancient peat beds buried beneath millennia of sediment. But a smaller group of researchers harbored different suspicions based on the sound's precise location. When they mapped the coordinates of this acoustic anomaly, they discovered it originated from the exact spot where those ancient tracks converge. The precise center where all those foot-worn paths from millennia ago meet beneath the water. One geophysicist described the layout with unsettling clarity. It's as if people were walking thousands of years ago toward something specific, toward a center point again and again, over multiple generations, as if drawn repeatedly to the same location. Drawn to what purpose? A shrine? A gathering place? A structure? Or something stranger that defies our modern categories entirely? We may never know with certainty what drew ancient people repeatedly to this now submerged location. But Doggerland reminds us how quickly an entire world can vanish beneath the waves, erased from human memory. A place where stories were told around fires, where children played, where voices echoed through forests, now replaced by silent water. The sea claimed this land, but not everything was lost to time and tide. In the shifting sands, we still find patterns left by those who came before us. In sonar images, we trace the grooves where countless feet once walked, with purpose. In the silence, we sense movement and purpose from a world we thought completely forgotten. And perhaps, in the deep cold stillness of the North Sea, the memory of Doggerland still resonates faintly. A heartbeat beneath the waves, waiting for someone to hear it clearly and understand its message from the distant past. Off the northeastern coast of New Zealand, where the Pacific Ocean plunges into one of its deepest scars, lies a stretch of darkness known as the Kermadec Trench. It descends over 10,000 meters, deeper than Mount Everest is tall, and stretches for more than 1,000 kilometers along an underwater frontier. It represents a place of absolute darkness, crushing pressure and perfect silence where sunlight has never penetrated. Or at least, it should be completely dark, according to everything we understand about ocean depths and physics. Yet in recent years, something strange has been documented down there that defies scientific explanation. Not by human eyes, which cannot survive such depths, but by sophisticated machines designed to withstand immense pressure. The first hint of something unusual came in 2014, when a Japanese autonomous deep-sea explorer was mapping a segment of the trench floor. Its cameras, specifically designed to function in total darkness, using artificial illumination, captured unexpected images. Faint pulses of light appeared in open water, not the familiar bioluminescent flashes produced by known deep-sea creatures. These were fundamentally different. They glowed softly like underwater fireflies, but showed no discernible source or biological origin. No visible organism, no particle movement, just hovering points of light that shimmered briefly before vanishing. Some appeared near the trench walls, while others emerged from the abyssal plain itself, a flat expanse where no light should exist. The research team initially dismissed these anomalies as camera interference or pressure-induced equipment malfunctions. But then it happened again, documented by different equipment operated by different researchers. In 2017, an American oceanographic expedition deployed deep-sea monitors in the trench to study microbial life and tectonic activity. One monitor, equipped with a low-light optical sensor, recorded something that shouldn't have been possible. For 6 consecutive hours on the second day after deployment, it documented a rhythmic glow, pulsing every 42 seconds, with perfect timing. The light wasn't particularly bright or dramatic, but its mere existence at such depths violated our understanding of physics. It appeared in a lightless environment where no known bioluminescent organism had ever been documented. And strangest of all, the glow appeared to be slowly rising, as if something far below was exhaling light upward through the water column. This phenomenon became known informally among researchers as the Abyssal lights, a designation found in no official scientific publication. Some theorists proposed it might represent a previously undocumented deep-sea jellyfish or plankton colony adapted to extreme depths. An entirely new class of organism evolved to survive where nothing should live according to conventional biological understanding. But despite multiple expeditions, no biological samples were ever recovered that could produce such effects. No organisms appeared on infrared scanning or sonar that corresponded with the light sources. Other researchers suggested tectonic activity might explain the phenomenon through more conventional mechanisms. The Kermadec Trench marks a highly active subduction zone, where one tectonic plate slides beneath another in constant motion. Perhaps friction, escaping gases, or unknown mineral interactions create natural luminescence under these extreme pressure conditions. But this theory fails to explain the most puzzling aspect of these lights: their organized patterns and rhythmic behavior. In 2019, a third expedition deployed a free-falling camera to a depth of 9,800 meters, nearly the deepest point of the trench. What it captured defies all conventional scientific explanation and remains classified in certain research databases. A ring of faint light appeared, slowly rotating just above the ocean floor, where no current should exist to cause movement. This perfect circle pulsed outward, then contracted inward, repeating this motion over 30 minutes with mechanical precision. The timing between pulses remained absolutely consistent, a level of regularity impossible in random natural phenomena. When this footage was presented at a private scientific conference, one senior oceanographer whispered, "It looks like something's signaling. Not a creature, not a geological event, but a place itself appearing to transmit something through light." No one could offer a satisfactory explanation based on known science. There exists a long-held belief among deep-sea explorers and researchers that perception itself changes at extreme depths. The deeper you descend, the more time loses meaning and orientation becomes impossible to maintain. At certain depths, the human mind struggles to distinguish up from down, night from day, as sensory input becomes increasingly unreliable. And yet, these abyssal lights follow precise order and timing that suggests deliberate pattern rather than random occurrence. One fringe theory, unproven but increasingly discussed in specialized research circles, suggests these lights might connect to subsurface mineral structures. These theoretical formations could act as natural capacitors, storing and releasing electrical charge triggered by unseen tectonic shifts. But even proponents of this theory acknowledge the mathematical precision of the patterns remains deeply troubling from a scientific perspective. Because randomness doesn't repeat with such exactitude, nature may produce light through various mechanisms, but it doesn't typically pulse on a perfect timer, like a metronome, counting seconds in the abyss. These observations leave us with unsettling questions that current science struggles to address. Why do these lights appear specifically in this remote trench and nowhere else with similar conditions? Why now, precisely when humans have developed machines finally capable of seeing into the darkest depths? Could the trench itself somehow be alive in ways that transcend our limited understanding of biological systems? Is it reacting to our presence, watching and responding to our mechanical observers? Or are the lights merely remnants of something older, not living organisms, but energy echoes? Fossils of some ancient process, still pulsing faintly from a time when the ocean floor wasn't silent and dark? The Kermadec Trench remains largely unexplored despite these compelling mysteries. The lights haven't been documented since 2021, despite several attempts to observe them again. But research instruments remain positioned throughout the trench, silently listening, recording, waiting. Perhaps one day the lights will return, pulsing like a heartbeat in Earth's deepest darkness. Slow, cold, patient, waiting for someone to witness them again, and perhaps finally understand their origin and purpose. Far out in the Indian Ocean, distant from any continent or heavily traveled sea route, lies a region almost no one ever visits or remembers. It's called the Saya de Malaya Bank, a shallow underwater plateau more than 1,000 kilometers east of Madagascar in perfect isolation. From above, it appears unremarkable, just another patch of open ocean, an empty blue expanse indistinguishable from surrounding waters. But deep beneath those waves lies one of the largest submerged banks in the world, a massive underwater feature with an impossible property. It vanishes completely from detection at irregular intervals. Not in the gradual way that islands erode or reefs decay through natural processes over centuries. It literally disappears from radar, sonar, and satellite detection without warning or explanation. The first official documentation of this phenomena dates to 1968 when a French naval aircraft flying routine oceanic patrol made a bizarre discovery. An enormous undersea reef clearly marked on their navigation charts had completely vanished from sonar detection. The vast coral shelf, spanning kilometers across, simply failed to return any echo signal when scanning equipment passed over it. The pilot initially assumed they were experiencing equipment malfunction, a reasonable conclusion given the impossibility of what they witnessed. But 2 days later, a second aircraft from an entirely different base reported the identical phenomenon in the same location. No readings registered on their instruments, showing only deep water where a massive structure should have appeared. Then on the third monitoring flight, the reef suddenly returned to visibility, as if it had never vanished. It reappeared on sonar, exactly where charts indicated it should be, with no explanation for its previous absence. Since this initial incident, at least 9 separate naval and research vessels have reported similar anomalies in the same region. Not optical illusions or subjective experiences, but complete technological failures. Echo signature disappearances, radar mapping blackouts. Even satellite imaging occasionally shows inexplicable blurring or data gaps when passing over these precise coordinates. But the mystery extends beyond instrumental readings into direct human experience. In 1997, a private expedition led by a French marine biologist attempted to dive along the southern edge of the bank. They sought untouched coral formations and rare marine species in this seldom visited region of the Indian Ocean. Their submersible launched under ideal conditions: calm weather, clear skies, perfect visibility above water. But 30 minutes into their planned descent, all communications abruptly terminated without warning. No storm had developed, no equipment failure was detected, just complete silence from the diving team. They resurfaced 2 hours later, visibly shaken by an experience they struggled to articulate coherently. The divers described profound optical distortion underwater unlike anything in their extensive diving experience. Not merely poor visibility or sediment clouds, but light bending in ways that violated physics as we understand it. The reef below them appeared to shift shape before their eyes. Solid columns of coral seemingly rising and sinking independently. One diver reported that it felt like the seafloor was breathing, expanding and contracting with deliberate rhythm. The footage they captured appeared murky and distorted, filled with flickering specks of green light that no known marine organism could produce. Most of their video recordings were corrupted beyond recovery despite using professional-grade equipment designed for deep-sea documentation. But one frame, carefully stabilized by research technicians, revealed something that shouldn't exist in this location. A geometric outline appeared, angled, rectangular, half buried in sand, resembling an architectural foundation rather than natural formation. Not coral, not volcanic rock, but something with straight edges and right angles, where none should exist, according to geological surveys. But historical records show no known ancient cities ever existed here, no lost islands, no evidence of human habitation at any point in history. No civilization could have built structures on Sayadamala when it has always been submerged, according to geological timelines. Yet despite this historical impossibility, local folklore in the Maldives, over 1,000 kilometers away, speaks of something relevant. Indigenous stories reference an ancient kingdom beneath the waves, a land supposedly swallowed in a single night of cataclysm. They call it Valona, the reef that hides itself from human eyes when it chooses not to be seen. Most modern scholars dismiss these stories as typical folklore found in many maritime cultures throughout history. But the disappearances continue with disturbing regularity that defies conventional explanation. In 2009, a research satellite mapping the region failed to transmit data for a full 36 minutes while passing over the bank. All instruments functioned perfectly according to system diagnostics. Weather conditions remained clear. Yet for this specific duration, all transmissions ceased completely, creating a perfect gap in data collection. The satellite resumed normal operation immediately upon passing beyond the reef's coordinates as if nothing had occurred. The data gap appeared completely clean in subsequent analysis, not static or corruption, but absolute emptiness. As if that specific section of ocean had temporarily ceased to exist within our instrument's perception. So what explains these consistent anomalies documented by multiple independent sources over decades? Is Sayadamala Bank merely a natural reef playing elaborate tricks on our technology through some unknown property? Do shifting sediments, unusual optical conditions, or localized magnetic anomalies create these persistent technological failures? Or does something more profound occur here, something intentional rather than accidental? Could this structure somehow recognize when it's being observed and react accordingly? Does it represent an echo of something ancient still remaining just beneath the sand, occasionally revealing itself? Or is this place not entirely bound to our reality, existing partially in another state beyond our complete perception? The Indian Ocean guards its secrets effectively, and this particular mystery remains safely beneath its waves, vanishing and returning according to some schedule or purpose we cannot yet comprehend with current scientific understanding. In the heart of the Gulf of Mexico, where the seafloor stretches flat and wide like an ancient submerged desert, lies a region scientists call the Sigsbee Abyssal Plain. It ranks among Earth's flattest places, mile after mile of soft sediment spreading across the Gulf's floor in perfect stillness. Nothing stands out in this underwater landscape. No cliffs, no trenches, no dramatic features, just an endless plain of darkness and pressure. But in 2010, deep beneath these silent waters, something moved that shouldn't have, according to geological expectations. During a survey mission mapping methane seeps in salt dome structures, a remote submersible detected an unexpected feature that puzzled researchers. It wasn't particularly dramatic or large compared to most geological formations, not a mountain or deep canyon, just a dome, a subtle bulge in the otherwise perfectly flat abyss, rising only 20 meters high, but spanning nearly 500 meters across. Too smooth, too symmetrical, too perfect to have formed through random natural processes, according to geologists who examined the data. Almost as if something beneath the seafloor had pushed upward with gentle, even pressure, creating this precisely formed elevation. Initial analysis suggested a salt diapir, a common geological structure in the Gulf, formed by the slow upward movement of buried salt layers. This represented the safest, most conventional explanation that didn't challenge established understanding of the region. But when researchers approached the formation with sonar equipment, something unprecedented occurred that defied explanation. The echo returned warped and distorted, not corrupted like faulty data or equipment malfunction. The sound itself appeared to have bent as if passing through something that wasn't quite solid matter, as we understand it. Then came the tremors that transformed this geological curiosity into something more mysterious. Over a 48-hour monitoring period, instruments left on the dome recorded tiny rhythmic pulses. Not earthquakes, not gas releases, not tectonic activity, just low, steady internal vibrations with inexplicable regularity. Every 6 minutes, precisely timed, a pulse would register on the seismographs, then silence would return. This pattern continued for several days, then abruptly stopped without explanation or apparent cause. 2 days later, the vibrations returned with identical timing and intensity, creating a pattern of presence and absence. This cycle repeated for weeks while researchers attempted to identify any known geological process that could explain such regularity. One scientist monitoring the data noted with nervous humor, "It's almost like the seafloor is breathing." Others found this observation disturbing rather than amusing, given the precision timing that suggested deliberate rhythm. When the submersible returned months later to continue investigation, researchers discovered the dome had changed position. It had shifted laterally by less than a meter. A tiny movement in geological terms, but significant because it shouldn't have moved at all. The sediment surrounding its base appeared different, finer, fresher, disturbed from beneath rather than above. As if something below the dome had adjusted its position slightly, pushing through the seafloor with deliberate movement. Core samples extracted from the formation revealed no salt presence, no gas pockets, nothing that explained conventional theories. Just unusually warm sediment, over 4 degrees Celsius warmer than the surrounding seafloor, without explanation. This temperature differential remained contained exclusively within the dome's perimeter, with perfect delineation. Step outside the structure's boundary, and the abyss returned to its normal cold temperature immediately. No hydrothermal vents existed nearby, no signs of volcanic activity, nothing that could explain localized heating. No biological activity appeared that might generate such warmth through decomposition or chemical processes. Yet the heat remained steady and contained as if the dome itself were somehow alive with internal processes. During the final exploratory dives in 2012, cameras documented something that transformed scientific curiosity into genuine unease. Small depressions had appeared across the dome's surface since the previous visits, perfectly circular indentations. These weren't natural erosion patterns or collapse features, according to geological analysis. They resembled impact craters, but with impossibly perfect circular symmetry and even spacing across the surface. One researcher described them as a field of sleeping eyes in unofficial field notes, never included in formal reports. Another simply stated, "It felt like we weren't supposed to be there," an unscientific observation that nonetheless resonated with the entire team. To this day, the dome remains officially unexplained, despite multiple theories attempting to classify it within known phenomena. It doesn't erupt like volcanic features, doesn't crack like tectonic formations, doesn't release gas like methane seeps. It simply trembles with perfect timing, maintains its unnatural warmth, and occasionally shifts position without apparent cause. Some geologists propose it represents a buried fluid chamber slowly migrating toward the surface through natural processes. Others suggest deep-sea tectonic stress points trapped below sediment layers might explain some observed properties. But none of these theories account for the timing, the heat signature, or the way sonar waves bend when scanning the formation. Unconfirmed reports suggest classified military interest in the site following initial discovery. Rumors mention sonar disruptions in the vicinity, faint metallic readings detected below the dome's base. But no official acknowledgement or explanation has emerged from any government entity or research institution. And still the vibrations continue, with perfect 6-minute intervals, whenever monitoring equipment visits the site. Still the dome breathes its regular rhythm beneath miles of dark Gulf water. The 6B abyssal plain should remain motionless and unchanged according to everything we understand about ocean geology. But something underneath this particular section moves with purpose and pattern that suggests intent rather than random geological processes. We map our oceans with increasing precision and tell ourselves we understand their fundamental nature and behavior. We track storms, name currents, and classify formations with scientific confidence in our knowledge. But far below the reach of light, beyond the pressure threshold, where human divers can never go, there are shapes that shift when no one is watching, formations that pulse with rhythms no natural process can explain. And this dome represents just one of these anomalies, patiently continuing its mysterious behavior in perfect darkness. Far up in the frozen crown of the Earth, beneath the drifting pack ice of the Arctic Ocean, lies a place few ships have ever sailed above. Fewer still have managed to explore what lies beneath the ice in this remote, inhospitable region at the top of our world. This is the Gagel Ridge, a hidden scar across the seafloor, stretching nearly 1,800 kilometers between Greenland and Siberia, in perfect isolation. It represents the slowest spreading mid-ocean ridge on our planet, expanding at barely a centimeter per year. It also ranks among the most mysterious underwater features we've discovered, defying multiple expectations about how such formations should behave. In 2001, a joint expedition between American and German research teams sent robotic submersibles under the Arctic ice to study this region. What they discovered stunned the scientific community and challenged fundamental assumptions about deep ocean geology. In the absolute darkness where no sunlight has ever penetrated, columns of black smoke rose from the seafloor. These billowing plumes surged upward like dark, underwater storms, visible only in the artificial lights of exploration vehicles. But this wasn't smoke as we understand it on the surface. It was superheated, highly acidic water laden with dissolved heavy metals. This dense fluid spewed from cracks in the Earth's crust, hydrothermal vents that shouldn't have existed in this location. Most known hydrothermal vent systems form along fast-spreading ridges, with active volcanism generating necessary heat. The Gagel Ridge, however, spreads so slowly that researchers believed it remained geologically inactive and dormant. They were wrong. These vents displayed more violent activity than those in more active regions, defying geological models. The water surrounding certain vents reached temperatures exceeding 400 degrees Celsius, hot enough to melt lead. Yet no nearby magma chambers could be detected, despite thorough scanning that should have located such heat sources. And perhaps strangest of all, these vents emitted a distinctive smell that instruments couldn't register, but human divers reported. During earlier Arctic test dives near shallower ridges, multiple divers independently described a sharp chemical scent, an unnatural odor resembling burnt plastic mixed with rotting eggs that shouldn't have been detectable underwater. No explanation has been found for how this chemical signature could reach human senses through diving equipment. When researchers lowered sensitive instruments into one particularly active black plume, readings defied conventional understanding. Temperature fluctuated unpredictably, pressure spiked without apparent cause, and faint magnetic disturbances appeared without explanation. One plume, nicknamed Behemoth by the research team, registered electromagnetic pulses every 11 seconds, with perfect timing. These weren't natural wave patterns created by water movement or tectonic stress, just steady pulses like an electronic signal. Almost like a beacon transmitting from the ocean floor, almost like a heartbeat of something massive and hidden. When cameras were lowered into Behemoth for visual documentation, another inexplicable event occurred that troubled researchers. Halfway through the descent, all camera equipment suddenly lost power without warning or apparent cause. Not a gradual failure suggesting battery depletion, but an immediate shutdown of all systems simultaneously. No physical damage was detected, no water infiltration, no pressure damage, just complete power loss. 3 minutes later, all systems reactivated without explanation or human intervention, resuming normal function. But when the video feed returned, the massive plume had completely vanished from view. No trace remained visible. It wasn't rising, wasn't dispersing gradually. It had simply disappeared entirely from detection. 15 minutes later, the plume reappeared slowly, building back to its original size as if it had never vanished. Some researchers speculated that subsurface chambers might be breathing, building pressure, then collapsing inward. This cycle could potentially release heat and minerals in sudden bursts, followed by periods of inactivity. Others proposed they might have discovered an entirely new class of vent system, operating on cyclical patterns, a formation that functions almost mechanically, following precise timing, unlike any known geological process. But no existing theory could explain the rhythm, the heat without magma, or why the plumes seemed to vanish and reappear. Then came the discovery that transformed scientific curiosity into something approaching genuine alarm. In sediment samples collected from areas just outside the vent fields, researchers found microscopic fragments of synthetic material. Particles resembling degraded polymers, almost like plastic, but chemically altered beyond clear identification. These weren't pollution from the surface. The samples came from 6 kilometers deep in a region untouched by human activity. No ocean currents exist, powerful enough to transport surface debris to such depths and bury it in undisturbed sediment. So where did these artificial fragments originate? Were they ancient materials from some unknown source, predating human civilization? Were they truly artificial or some unknown natural formation that merely resembled manufactured substances? Did they come from somewhere beyond our understanding of Earth's geological and biological processes? To this day, no research team has returned to study Behemoth in comprehensive detail, despite these compelling mysteries. The Arctic environment presents extreme challenges: constantly shifting ice, dangerous conditions, limited operational windows. Research funding inevitably flows toward more accessible regions with less risk and greater chance of publishable results. But somewhere in the darkness beneath the polar ice, the black smoke continues rising through frigid water. In the eternal night of the Arctic seafloor, something breathes with slow, hot, rhythmic regularity. And somewhere, deep within the fractured crust where the Gackle Ridge splits the ocean floor, these vents continue their mysterious behavior. Pulsing, heating, hiding, and perhaps remembering something from Earth's distant past that remains beyond our current understanding. Hidden far beneath the coldest, most lifeless ice on Earth, lies liquid water where no liquid should exist. Not just frozen water trapped in crystalline form, but an actual lake buried under nearly 4 kilometers of Antarctic ice. Sealed away from sunlight for millions of years in perfect isolation, Lake Vostok represents one of the largest subglacial lakes ever discovered. A body of water approximately the size of Lake Ontario remains untouched, undisturbed, and unseen by human eyes throughout history. And deep at its center rests something strange that defies conventional geological understanding. A crater, perfectly circular and unlike anything that should exist in this sealed environment. Scientists first detected this feature in the late 1990s when satellite measurements revealed a circular depression in the ice sheet. This massive depression appeared directly above the lake's center, perfectly round, spanning nearly 200 kilometers in diameter. Hidden from visual observation on the surface, invisible to the naked eye, detectable only through precise measurement technology. Initially, researchers proposed it might represent the scar of an ancient meteor impact that struck Antarctica long before glaciation. An impact crater preserved from a time before ice swallowed the continent and sealed this region away from the outside world. But deeper investigation revealed something far more puzzling that challenged fundamental assumptions about this subglacial environment. Ice-penetrating radar showed that this circular formation wasn't located in the ice layer as initially believed. It existed under the lake itself, beneath the floor, buried in solid bedrock where no such feature should logically exist. And it displayed thermal properties that defied explanation. It remained warmer than surrounding rock by several degrees. Not dramatically hot, not volcanic, just slightly warmer than it should be, according to every geological model. Too warm to be truly ancient, too precisely shaped to have formed through known natural processes. The structure, beneath Lake Vostok, appeared to contain distinct layers visible in radar imaging, concentric rings like a fingerprint. These rings formed a pattern, pressed into stone with geometric precision, that natural formations rarely display. And at its absolute center, a single vertical shaft-like formation extended downward into Earth's crust. This feature stretched far deeper than geological models predicted possible, disappearing beyond our ability to track it. Some scientists attributed the heat signature to geothermal activity, natural friction between rock layers generating warmth. Others proposed radioactive minerals deep in the bedrock might create the temperature differential without external energy. But the shape, the symmetry, the perfect circular form, these characteristics matched no known geological formation on Earth. Even stranger, the lake itself defied physical expectations about how water should behave in this environment. Despite being sealed under miles of Antarctic ice, where temperatures plunged to minus 90 degrees Celsius, Lake Vostok remains liquid. It should be frozen solid, according to basic physics, yet it maintains liquid state for reasons that continue puzzling researchers. How? Through a perfect balance of forces, geothermal heat rising from below, enormous pressure from ice above. This delicate equilibrium has maintained the lake in liquid form for millions of years without external influence. Yet no known life should survive in such an environment according to biological assumptions. No sunlight penetrates to provide energy for photosynthesis, no oxygen replenishment, nothing but perfect isolation. Just darkness, pressure, and ancient water sealed away since before human civilization emerged on Earth's surface. When Russian scientists finally managed to drill into the lake in 2012 after years of careful preparation, they encountered something unexpected. They anticipated finding sterile water, chemically pure and devoid of biological material, after millions of years of isolation. Instead, their samples contained DNA fragments, unlike anything in comparative biological databases. These genetic materials didn't match any known Antarctic species or any organism cataloged in scientific records. Microbes, perhaps? Or something more exotic with no clear evolutionary relationship to surface life forms. This data provoked immediate controversy within the scientific community following its release. Some researchers dismissed the findings as contamination from the drilling equipment despite extensive precautions. Others recognized the possibility of discovering an entirely separate evolutionary path developing in perfect isolation. The same drilling operation recovered tiny magnetic particles from the lake that didn't belong in Antarctic geology. Shiny, irregular fragments, with properties suggesting manufacture rather than natural formation. These anomalous materials have never been fully explained, despite extensive analysis in multiple laboratories. Subsequent drilling attempts encountered bizarre pressure anomalies that prevented further exploration. Sensitive instruments malfunctioned, without explanation, when approaching certain depths. Boreholes collapsed despite reinforcement designed to prevent exactly this type of failure. And that vertical shaft beneath the crater, the column extending downward beyond scanning range, remains completely unexplored. It might represent nothing extraordinary, just geological coincidence and instrument limitations, creating false patterns. Or it might be something far older and more significant than current scientific paradigms can accommodate. Some researchers privately refer to the formation as the Antarctic Eye, not in official publications, but in field notes and conversations. This nickname emerged because when viewed from space, through topographical mapping, the perfect circle seems to look back at observers. Cold, round, watching with patient stillness from beneath miles of ancient ice. No one knows what lies at the absolute bottom of this mysterious shaft. No one knows exactly how deep it extends into Earth's crust beneath the Antarctic continent. Because even with 21st century technology and scientific advancement, the ice maintains its secrets. Not through active resistance or any supernatural agency, but through the simple barrier of its extreme environment. The profound cold, the pressure, the isolation that keeps Lake Vostok closed to casual exploration, or easy understanding. The silence of this place raises unsettling questions that linger in researchers' minds despite scientific detachment. Did something impact there in Earth's distant past, or did something rise from below? Off the coast of the Philippines, between the island chains of Borneo and Palawan, lies a deep marine basin known as the Sulu Sea. From the surface, it appears unremarkable. Warm turquoise water, vibrant coral reefs, peaceful tropical beauty, hiding what lies beneath. But in its northern sector, near the edge of the Sulu Trench, scientists have documented a geological anomaly that defies explanation. A zone where conventional scientific instruments fail consistently and predictably, where the seafloor itself seems to vanish from detection. Not visually to human observers, but from every type of scanning technology we've developed to map underwater terrain. In 1993, a Japanese bathymetric survey team attempted to map the trench's slope using high-resolution sonar equipment. Their systems functioned perfectly until they reached a specific 30-kilometer wide section in the central region of the trench. At this precise location, sonar returns simply stopped. No data returned to their instruments, despite multiple attempts. No floor, no contours, no geographical features registered on their screens, just a flat, empty void where information should appear. Initially suspecting equipment malfunction, they recalibrated all systems and tried again with identical results. They switched to sub-bottom profiling technology designed to penetrate sediment layers and image structures beneath the seafloor. Again, at the exact same coordinates, the signal simply stopped, as if striking an invisible barrier that absorbed all energy. It was as if something was completely absorbing or blocking their signals, preventing any return data from reaching sensors. When they deployed a weighted line to measure depth manually using ancient but reliable techniques, something even stranger occurred. The line reached approximately 5,400 meters, and then suddenly went slack in a way that experienced researchers found troubling. Not because it had struck bottom as expected, but because it continued falling without resistance, as if the ocean floor had opened beneath it. They never located the actual end of that measuring line, despite repeated attempts. When finally retrieved, the line appeared torn and frayed at its end, damaged by some unknown force or surface. No explanation was ever officially determined for this damage pattern that matched no known seafloor terrain. Years later, in 2008, a deep-diving autonomous underwater vehicle from a Philippine-American marine biology project entered the same zone. For the first 4,000 meters of descent, all systems functioned normally, collecting standard oceanographic data without incident. Then the sensors went completely dark, not broken or disabled, just returning no data whatsoever from the environment. When the vehicle was recovered and its systems examined, technicians discovered a 4-minute segment of complete data blackout. All functions had continued operating, power remained stable, yet no environmental information had been recorded during this period. When audio sensors were enhanced during analysis, technicians detected something that shouldn't have been there. Low-frequency vibrations with a distinct pattern, 3 beats, then silence, repeating with mechanical precision. Not mechanical noise from the vehicle itself, not natural water currents, almost like an intentional coded sequence. One project leader described the unsettling feeling as being watched from below, an unscientific observation shared privately. Then came the 2015 expedition that transformed scientific curiosity into genuine concern among researchers involved. This time, a manned submersible carrying human observers deployed with electromagnetic scanning equipment to search for mineral deposits. What they discovered defied conventional geology and raised questions no one could answer satisfactorily. A hole, not a natural trench or thermal vent, but a perfectly circular depression spanning nearly 300 meters in diameter. Too geometrically perfect to have formed naturally, too clean-edged to result from underwater erosion or geological processes. The sediment at its edge appeared disturbed in patterns, suggesting recent movement as if something had entered or exited through this opening. Inside this circular void, sonar equipment ceased functioning entirely despite operating perfectly everywhere else. Vehicle lights dimmed without explanation, despite stable power readings on all systems. Batteries drained at approximately 3 times their normal rate when operating near this formation. And most disturbing of all, when the team surfaced and reviewed camera footage, they discovered an unexplained gap in their visual record. The 10-second segment had vanished completely, not corrupted or damaged, simply absent from otherwise continuous recording. The footage cut out precisely as the submersible approached the rim of the circular depression. It resumed only after the vehicle had passed beyond this boundary, as if nothing had interrupted the recording. Some team members attributed these anomalies to equipment failure or environmental interference with electronic systems. Others harbored private doubts about such convenient explanations that failed to address the precision of these effects. Since this incident, multiple military satellites have failed to record accurate seafloor topography in the same 30-kilometer zone. Every image returns blurry, incomplete, or entirely blank regardless of the technology or agency attempting to map this region. This area has earned an unofficial designation among those who study it, the Gray Patch, a place where data simply refuses to exist. Local fishermen in coastal villages throughout the southern Philippines share their own stories about these waters. They speak of boats whose anchors never touch bottom, despite using chains far longer than the charted depth would require. Of strange lights occasionally seen moving beneath the waves against prevailing currents, defying natural movement patterns. They discuss these observations quietly, cautiously, as if speaking too loudly might draw unwanted attention from whatever dwells below. Some scientific experts suggest deep-sea gas vents or collapsing sediment layers could potentially cause radar disruption. Others propose underwater magnetic fields might interfere with scanning equipment and electronic systems in predictable ways. But none of these conventional explanations account for the perfect symmetry of the depression. None explain the rhythmic patterns detected, the missing footage, or the way that every research attempt encounters identical difficulties. The ocean floor represents the one constant we expect in marine environments: solid, measurable, fixed in place. But here in the depths of the Sulu Trench, even this fundamental certainty disappears from our instruments. Not just from human view, but from existence itself, leaving only questions without answers. Far out in the western reaches of the Pacific Ocean, where no land interrupts the endless water for thousands of kilometers, there lies a vast, desolate underwater trench known to very few as the Pacific Moat, a name you won't find on official maps. It's not a designation used in textbooks or scientific journals, but among certain oceanographers and signal analysts, it circulates quietly. Not for what this formation contains physically, but for what it once communicated to those listening in the darkness. In 1996, during a routine analysis of undersea acoustic data gathered by the U.S. Navy's sophisticated Global Hydrophone Array, a strange recording was flagged for further investigation by automated systems designed to detect anomalous patterns. This underwater listening network was originally constructed to track submarine movements during the Cold War era. Instead of mechanical propellers or engines, it captured something that defied conventional classification by acoustic experts. Not a whale call, not an earthquake's rumble, not volcanic activity from the seafloor. This was structured sound. It originated from 7,200 meters below the surface, from the base of a steep trench east of the Mariana Basin in perfect isolation. The frequency registered extremely low below the threshold of human hearing without technological enhancement. But when played back at higher speeds, it displayed linguistic properties that troubled those who analyzed it. Not words in any recognized language, but definite rhythm and pattern, suggesting communication rather than random noise. 4 distinct pulses, followed by a pause, then 7 pulses, another pause, 3 more, then 2, before returning to silence. No marine creature known to science produces sound in this specific pattern, especially not from such crushing depths. Yet the signal repeated with perfect consistency every 19 hours for 6 consecutive days before stopping completely. Researchers attempted to triangulate the sound's exact origin point, but encountered another puzzling characteristic. The signal didn't radiate outward spherically as sound waves typically do when traveling through water. It moved laterally, as if sliding across the trench floor rather than dispersing in all directions from a single point. Some analysts suggested it might represent nothing more than equipment feedback, a technical loop in the hydrophone system. Others remained unconvinced by this explanation, given the signal's complexity and regular repetition over nearly a week. A private oceanographic institute dispatched an unmanned probe to the region later that same year to investigate further. This device was specifically engineered to withstand extreme pressure and equipped with both hydrophones and magnetometers. It successfully reached operational depth and transmitted one anomalous reading, a sharp vertical spike in magnetic activity. Then it went completely silent. All transmissions ceased without warning or explanation, despite redundant communication systems. The probe was eventually recovered months later, washed ashore on Palau over 1,000 kilometers from its deployment location. Its outer casing showed unexplained warping despite being designed to withstand pressures far greater than those at deployment depth. Its internal data storage had been completely erased, not corrupted or damaged, but returned to factory default condition. No physical signs of water infiltration appeared. No corrosion indicated exposure to adverse conditions. Just silence where data should have been, and a device that had traveled an impossible distance against prevailing currents. Years later, in 2004, an advanced NOAA listening station detected an almost identical acoustic pattern in the same region. Once again, the sequence appeared, 4 pulses, 7, 3, 2, matching the original recording with perfect fidelity. But this time, it originated from the opposite side of the trench, as if the source had relocated across kilometers of seafloor. This marked the last documented occurrence of this specific signal despite continuous monitoring of the region. Since these events, researchers have observed that sonar pings in this area behave unpredictably in ways that defy acoustic physics. Signals bend at impossible angles, creating distorted maps with blurred sections that shouldn't occur with properly functioning equipment. One submersible pilot reported seeing what appeared to be ripples in the water at 6,000 meters depth, a physical impossibility at such pressure. Nothing was moving nearby. No current existed that could explain this visual distortion, just motion without apparent cause. In the 15 years since these incidents, marine researchers have quietly avoided mounting expeditions near the Pacific Moat, despite its scientific potential. There's nothing there, they insist, with unusual certainty considering how little we truly know about deep ocean environments. Just a trench, just pressure and rock. Statements that sound more like reassurance than scientific assessment. Yet despite this dismissal, the U.S. Navy has never deleted the original signal recording from its classified archives. In fact, this acoustic anomaly remains under restricted access, requiring special clearance to review despite its apparent insignificance. Even now, in certain hydroacoustic laboratories around the world, engineers still test their equipment against this recording as a benchmark. They refer to it informally as the forgotten signal, a name that suggests it should be overlooked or disregarded. Yet, for something supposedly forgotten, it has never stopped echoing through scientific consciousness and classified databases. Perhaps it was merely an ancient geological event, a momentary tectonic heartbeat from Earth's crust. Or perhaps something was speaking from the darkness and no one knew how to answer its call. Just west of Thailand and Myanmar, nestled between swirling currents of the Indian Ocean and the Bay of Bengal, lies the Andaman Sea. This region is celebrated for its emerald waters, scattered island chains, and volcanic ridges that attract tourists and researchers alike. But far beneath these sunlit shallows and vibrant coral reefs, hidden under 5 kilometers of warm, murky water, something extraordinary rests on the seafloor. A grid perfectly geometric and entirely out of place in what should be a natural environment shaped by random forces. It was first detected in 2003 through pure accident when a commercial undersea cable survey ship mapped the area for a planned transoceanic data line. The sonar images returned strange results that initially seemed like equipment malfunction. To the engineering team, They showed a large section of seabed, roughly 40 kilometers wide, divided into perfect rectangles, like an underwater checkerboard. Not natural fracture lines, not tectonic scarring or coral formations, but straight edges and right angles with geometric precision. Engineers immediately suspected technical glitches in their sophisticated mapping systems, so they recalibrated all equipment and conducted a second pass. The same pattern appeared with identical precision, contradicting every natural formation process known to marine geology. Worse still, comparing the two scans revealed that some rectangular shapes had shifted slightly between passes, moving only a few meters, but not randomly. The movements followed a discernible pattern, like pieces sliding on a game board according to predetermined rules. This data was quietly forwarded to marine geologists throughout Southeast Asia, who began investigating without publicity or media attention. Most experts initially assumed they would discover a conventional explanation, perhaps mud volcanoes, sediment uplift, or even fossilized coral shelves. What they found instead defied all conventional geological understanding and raised questions no one was prepared to answer. When they attempted to drill into one of the squares, expecting to encounter soft sediment typical of the seafloor, something unprecedented occurred. The drill struck an unyielding, hard surface, unlike anything expected at this depth or location. Not bedrock, not basalt, or any known natural formation, but something smooth, dense, and seemingly manufactured. The core sample recovered from this attempt emerged, fused, and heat-hardened, unnaturally pale, with tiny metallic flecks embedded throughout its structure. Analysis revealed these metal particles weren't native to the region's geology. They simply shouldn't have been present in this location. The research team carefully recorded these coordinates, sealed the unusual sample for further study, and planned a second, more comprehensive mission. 2 days later, their monitoring equipment anchored above the site went completely offline without warning. When divers descended to check the tethered sensors, they found the cables intact, but the equipment itself had vanished completely. Torn away by some powerful force that left no drag marks, no debris field, nothing to indicate what had happened. As the team processed this puzzling development, the ocean itself responded with unmistakable movement. Not a surface wave or current, but a low rumble that vibrated through the entire research vessel with disturbing intensity. Instruments recorded a momentary dip, compass needles twitched erratically, and for 7 continuous minutes, the seafloor beneath them trembled. Then as suddenly as it began, all movement ceased, returning to perfect stillness as if nothing had occurred. When the crew reviewed their sonar afterward, they discovered the grid had changed in ways that shouldn't have been possible in such a short time frame. One of the rectangular sections had rotated slightly, another had sunk deeper into the surrounding sediment, a third had split into 2 distinct shapes. It was as if something beneath the seafloor was actively rearranging itself while they watched, responding to their presence with deliberate movement. Some researchers whispered, "Atlantis," while others laughed nervously at such unscientific speculation. But one senior geologist made an observation that silenced the room. If this was land instead of sea, we'd call these ruins without hesitation. To this day, no official explanation has been provided for these geometric anomalies beneath the Bowman Sea. The survey data was quietly filed away. The cable route was altered to avoid this location entirely, and most researchers moved on to less disturbing projects. Yet occasionally, another sonar image appears online from subsequent passes over the region, always slightly blurred, always quickly dismissed. But the angles remain visible. The pattern holds consistent, despite the distortion, raising uncomfortable questions about what lies beneath. No coral reef grows in perfect squares according to any known biological process. No volcano creates eruption patterns in straight lines and right angles. Natural erosion doesn't rearrange itself with apparent purpose and geometric precision. Something down there is moving, not rapidly, not constantly, but with deliberate intent that suggests intelligence or programmed behavior. The Andaman Sea appears peaceful and ordinary on its surface, as sunlight dances across gentle waves. But beneath, in perpetual darkness where pressure crushes and distorts, the grid continues its slow, mysterious movements. Adjusting, shifting, perhaps still building something whose purpose remains beyond our comprehension. South of the Falkland Islands, deep in the forgotten waters between South America and Antarctica, lies a tectonic misfit. The Scotia Plate, wedged between larger, more dominant crustal plates, drifting like a lost puzzle piece in cold southern waters. Scientists generally consider it a quiet buffer zone, a place where pressure releases through minor earthquakes and standard geological settling. But what researchers discovered on the floor of this ocean defied standard classification and challenged fundamental assumptions about natural formation. In 2009, satellite gravity scans detected an anomaly that shouldn't have existed according to conventional geological understanding. Not the typical trench or underwater canyon that forms through known tectonic processes, but something far more precise and unsettling. A spiral, a massive, perfectly formed spiral, carved into the Earth's crust, as if by deliberate design rather than random natural forces. This formation didn't appear in older maps of the region, despite its massive scale, suggesting either recent creation or previous technological limitations. The pattern wasn't chaotic or irregular as natural formations typically are, it displayed clear structure and mathematical precision. A spiral containing 3 wide loops that drop steeply downward, followed by 4 tighter circles wrapping inward toward a central hole of unknown depth. From above, it resembled an enormous screw boring into the planet, too perfect to have formed through random geological processes. Experts initially dismissed the finding as a data processing error and ordered complete risk scanning of the area using different equipment. The results confirmed the spiral's existence with even greater clarity, forcing serious scientific consideration of its origin and nature. Some proposed it might represent a collapsed caldera, the remains of some extinct underwater volcano that imploded in a spiraling pattern. But this theory collapsed under scrutiny. The ridges appeared too mathematically precise, the curves too symmetrical for natural formation. Then a mathematician noticed something that transformed scientific curiosity into genuine unease among researchers studying the anomaly. Each spiral loop was spaced according to the Fibonacci sequence, the same mathematical progression found in nautilus shells, sunflower patterns, and galaxy formations. The same ratio appears in ancient architecture across human civilizations, from Greek temples to Egyptian pyramids, suggesting universal significance. Yet geological processes don't typically follow such precise mathematical formulas. When shaping Earth's crust, they produce randomness, not mathematical perfection. Determined to investigate further, researchers dispatched a submersible, an unmanned deep-sea probe, equipped with advanced sensors, lights, and cameras. It descended loop by loop, transmitting real-time footage that revealed more questions than answers about this impossible formation. The rock appeared unusually smooth in certain sections, almost polished to a reflective finish unlike natural erosion patterns. As the probe continued deeper, instrument readings began behaving erratically in ways that suggested unknown forces at work. By the third spiral, pressure sensors fluctuated wildly, despite the consistent descent rate that should have produced steady readings. Temperature measurements dropped unexpectedly in patterns that violated thermodynamic principles for this depth and location. Halfway down this mysterious structure, the probe's compass began drifting, not wildly spinning, but gradually losing accurate orientation. Isn't sonar detected something else that shouldn't have been there, a repeating pulse occurring precisely every 11 seconds without variation. This sound registered as rhythmic, mechanical, and completely foreign to known geological processes or biological sources. As the device approached the central shaft at the spiral's center, where answers might finally emerge, all systems failed simultaneously. The camera feed froze, lights dimmed to darkness, and transmission ceased entirely without warning or explanation. No further data reached the surface, despite backup systems designed to prevent complete communication failure. The probe resurfaced 17 hours later under its own power, completely intact externally with no visible damage to explain its malfunction. Its memory core had been wiped completely clean except for a single 2-second video clip repeating in an endless loop. This fragment showed nothing but the camera spinning briefly, a hint of motion blur, and for just a moment, a metallic glint that shouldn't exist. Not rock, not coral, not any natural formation, but something reflective that suggested manufactured material or refined metal. Since this failed expedition, the location has remained under distant observation, but no further direct exploration has been attempted. Satellite imagery continues showing the spiral, which appears to shift position very slightly over time, as if rotating incrementally. 1 millimeter at a time, slowly, patiently, too gradually, for casual observation, but measurable through precise comparative imaging. There exists no known tectonic process that could create a mathematical spiral in the ocean crust with such precision. No established geological mechanism could cause it to rotate with measurable consistency over years of observation. Some researchers suggest it might represent an ancient, collapsed vent, preserved in unusual conditions. Others propose a tectonic whirlpool frozen in time. But those who've reviewed the raw data, the pressure anomalies, magnetic distortions, and that pulsing sonar echo, tell a different story privately. One senior oceanographer described it off-record as Earth's deepest maze, a structure that seems designed rather than formed. Another referred to it simply as a wound, something that suggests trauma rather than natural development in the planet's crust. Whatever created the Scotia Plate spiral, it shows no signs of stopping its slow, deliberate rotation, even after decades of observation. No one has sent another probe since that failed mission, not because of fear, but because the scientific community remains uncertain what questions to even ask. Is this structure natural, engineered, or something that defies these categories entirely? No consensus exists, no theory adequately explains all observed properties, and perhaps that uncertainty serves some purpose. Because whatever waits at the bottom of this mathematical impossibility continues turning, very slowly but with unmistakable purpose. Like something gradually awakening after an unimaginably long period of dormancy beneath miles of cold, dark water. In the far northwestern corner of the Pacific Ocean lies a sea most people couldn't locate on a map without assistance. The Sea of Akatchik, surrounded by Russia's eastern coastline and almost entirely enclosed by land, isolated from major shipping routes and popular attention. Cold, remote, and generally quiet. This body of water represents the kind of place where weather systems move through unimpeded, where ocean currents flow and marine life exists without much human observation or interference. It rarely attracts deep-sea research expeditions or significant scientific interest compared to more accessible or dramatic marine environments. Yet beneath its surface lies a formation that has puzzled marine scientists for decades while receiving remarkably little public attention. A massive underwater ridge that violates fundamental principles of geological formation, according to those who have studied it closely. On sonar maps, this ridge immediately appears anomalous compared to surrounding seafloor features. Not because of its mere existence, underwater ridges are common throughout Earth's oceans, shaped by plate tectonics over millions of years. But this particular formation doesn't follow the established patterns these structures should display according to geological models. It runs against the grain of surrounding features rather than aligning with them as natural formations typically do. Its shape displays unusual symmetry rarely found in structures created through random tectonic forces and erosion. Its slope presents another anomaly, gradual and even on one side before dropping off sharply on the opposite face, resembling a manufactured ramp. And perhaps most puzzling of all, its surface lacks the jagged, broken texture typical of natural underwater ridges. Instead, it appears smooth and eroded in patterns that don't align with the surrounding seabed or known underwater current effects. This formation was first properly documented in the 1970s during a Soviet naval survey that remained classified for decades. Details eventually emerged through leaked maritime records rather than official scientific publications or government disclosures. According to these records, the ridge measures over 300 kilometers in length, a massive feature by any standard. It rises dramatically from the surrounding seafloor, maintaining a surprisingly straight trajectory for most of its length, with only minor deviations. It shows no connection to any nearby volcanic activity that might explain its formation through typical geological processes. It doesn't align with any known tectonic boundary that would account for its presence through plate movement or collision. Yet it simply exists, an enormous, unexplained feature resting beneath cold northern waters, like a forgotten artifact. No comprehensive research has ever been published about this ridge, not from Russian scientists who have the most direct access, not from international oceanographic organizations, not from any academic institution, despite its scientific significance. When questions arise about this formation in professional circles, answers typically remain vague and dismissive. Just another seafloor anomaly, not worth specialized attention or focused study, according to official statements. But among researchers who have quietly examined available data, several disturbing details emerge that contradict this casual dismissal. First, the sediment surrounding the ridge displays unusual layering patterns, unlike nearby formations. Samples collected near its base show displacement patterns suggesting the material was scraped or pushed aside rather than naturally deposited. As if something massive once moved along the seabed, creating furrows and disruption that later settled into their current position. Some sections of the ridge reveal exposed rock surfaces, unusually flat, unusually clean of sediment, defying normal underwater erosion patterns. Second, acoustic analysis reveals that this formation absorbs sound rather than reflecting it like typical underwater geological features. Deep-sea ridges normally echo sonar in predictable ways depending on their composition and shape, a fundamental principle of underwater mapping. But this particular structure seems to swallow acoustic signals, creating sudden drops in sonar return when submarines or research vessels pass nearby. A sharp edge of silence appears on instruments, as if the ridge itself consumes sound waves rather than bouncing them back to receivers. Third, and perhaps most troubling, this massive feature doesn't align with any surrounding geological context that would explain its formation. No related fracture zones appear nearby, no collapsed volcanic structures, no seismic scarring that might suggest its natural origin. It simply exists in isolation, imposing and silent, defying conventional geological classification through its very presence. Some marine geologists had proposed that it might represent an ancient thrust fault buried and reshaped by glacial activity over millennia. Others suggest it could be a remnant of a microplate that somehow drifted and fused with the larger Pacific plate during prehistoric tectonic movement. But these remain speculative theories, without supporting evidence, educated guesses rather than conclusive explanations. No research team has conducted comprehensive on-site investigation with cameras and sampling equipment, despite the ridge's scientific significance. And this reluctance to investigate thoroughly may represent the strangest aspect of this entire mystery. No country or research institution seems particularly eager to explore this feature, despite its obvious scientific importance. One researcher from Sakhalin reportedly described the area as off-limits during a conference, though whether this meant politically or physically remained unclear. Rumors occasionally surface, suggesting the area receives monitoring from military vessels, that unmanned underwater vehicles malfunction when approaching too closely, that certain electromagnetic signatures sometimes spike near the ridge without explanation or known source. But these claims never receive official confirmation or denial. They simply circulate quietly among those with interest in deep-sea anomalies. So, what exactly lies beneath the Sea of Okachuk, a natural formation with unusual properties that science simply hasn't prioritized studying? A fragment of ancient geological history lifted from deep beneath younger stone through some unknown process? Or something else entirely, a structure whose origins lie outside conventional geological understanding and natural formation processes? The truth remains submerged beneath cold, heavy water, unmapped in detail, unexplored directly, unclaimed by any scientific consensus. Just a silent, massive ridge rising from the seafloor of a forgotten sea, holding whatever secrets it contains beneath layers of sediment and scientific neglect. Just off the western coast of the Bahamas, in water so shallow and clear, you can see the bottom from a passing boat, lies something that shouldn't exist. Not according to geological expectations, not according to our understanding of this region's history, yet it remains undeniably present. A stretch of stones arranged with such precision and purpose that those who encounter it for the first time invariably reach the same conclusion. It looks exactly like a road, not a random pile of rocks or scattered coral debris, but a flat path made of neatly aligned rectangular slabs. Each massive stone block sits in perfect proximity to the next, creating a continuous surface that appears designed for transit rather than formed by chance. They call it the Bimini Road, a structure approximately 1 kilometer long, resting just a few meters below the ocean's surface, in perfect visibility. The blocks composing this formation are enormous, some exceeding 12 feet in width, and most feature the right angles and straight edges that nature typically avoids. Without specialized knowledge, an observer might reasonably conclude they were looking at an ancient pier or foundation of some structure now claimed by the sea. The first documented reports of the Bimini Road emerged in the late 1960s, when snorkelers exploring the area noticed this unusually organized arrangement of stones. Initially, it didn't generate significant scientific interest. The Bahamas contain numerous unusual rock formations, shaped by complex geological processes. But when aerial photographs revealed the full pattern, the scientific community could no longer dismiss what appeared below the waves. The road curved with purpose, maintained consistent width throughout its length, and followed a shape resembling a breakwater or causeway. Its precision and apparent design suggested deliberate construction rather than random natural processes that typically shape underwater features. This discovery sparked intense debate and competing theories about the formation's true nature and origin that continue to this day. Some researchers propose the Bimini Road represents the remains of an ancient human settlement, one that existed before rising seas submerged coastal regions. These rising waters followed the last ice age when melting glaciers dramatically elevated global sea levels and reshaped coastlines worldwide. Others advance more dramatic interpretations, suggesting it might be the last visible trace of Atlantis, or some equally advanced prehistoric civilization. A culture capable of quarrying, moving, and precisely placing massive stone blocks long before modern technology made such feats possible. They point to their remarkable uniformity in block size, the consistency in arrangement, and the way certain pieces fit together as evidence of intelligent design. Skeptical geologists counter with natural explanations, proposing it represents beach rock formations shaped over thousands of years through erosion. According to this theory, waves and chemical processes gradually transformed limestone into these seemingly artificial straight lines and squared corners. The Bimini Road would thus represent an illusion, natural processes coincidentally creating patterns that appear designed to human pattern-seeking minds. But even some geological experts acknowledge certain features that resist simple natural explanation without human intervention. Parts of the road appear to rest on a second layer of stones beneath, almost like intentional tiered construction rather than random deposition. Several blocks show evidence of wedge stones and joints that appear deliberately chiseled to create stable connections between massive components. Some blocks seem stacked in configurations that defy random placement, suggesting deliberate arrangement for structural integrity. Gaps between certain stones appear suspiciously clean and regular, as if they were cut or intentionally spaced rather than naturally separated. Despite extensive investigation, no tools have ever been discovered nearby that would confirm human construction. No pottery fragments, no artifacts, nothing that definitively connects the road to any specific culture or historical period. Carbon dating of organic material found around the structure offers only approximate estimates ranging from 2,000 to 10,000 years old. This wide variance depends on which researchers you consult and what methodology they apply to their samples. The fundamental mystery persists despite decades of study and debate among qualified experts from multiple disciplines. Why does this path follow what appears to be a deliberate design rather than random natural patterning? Why do the blocks show evidence of shaping and precise fitting that suggests human intervention? Why does it curve like a constructed road before ending abruptly without apparent destination or purpose? No conclusive evidence exists, proving it once led to a city, temple, or any structure that would confirm human origin. Yet its very existence challenges our understanding of what should be present in these waters, based on known history. So the Binani Road remains a compelling enigma, perhaps nothing more than an unusual geological formation that tricks human perception. Or perhaps the final visible trace of something older and more significant than our historical records acknowledge. Something that existed long before our written history began, leaving only this submerged pathway as testament to its reality. It sits quietly in sunlit shallows, easily accessible, frequently visited, yet still defying definitive explanation. Like a question written in stone, pointing toward a chapter of human history we've somehow forgotten or never knew existed. The Caribbean Sea ranks among the most thoroughly studied bodies of water on our planet, for multiple reasons. Tourists flock to its shores year-round. Shipping routes crisscross its surface constantly. Submarines patrol its depths, and oceanographers monitor its currents. Everyone from cruise passengers to military vessels passes through these waters, creating a constantly observed environment where little escapes notice. The water maintains warm temperatures throughout the year, currents follow predictable patterns, and the region undergoes constant monitoring. So when something truly unusual happens here, it doesn't go unnoticed or undocumented by those watching these waters. In 2019, a series of acoustic sensors positioned along the seafloor detected something that defied conventional explanation. These weren't amateur devices or questionable equipment. These were military-grade sensors designed for precision detection, part of a wider ocean monitoring network used to track submarine movements, undersea earthquakes, and unauthorized vessel traffic. What they recorded wasn't random noise or typical marine sounds, but a structured signal with clear patterns. Not a whale call, not a mechanical glitch in the equipment, not interference from surface vessels. A deliberate pulse, rhythmic, consistent, almost machine-like in its precision, yet originating from empty water. It registered just at the edge of human hearing range, low, steady, impossible to dismiss as equipment malfunction. These sophisticated sensors are specifically calibrated to filter out background ocean noise and focus only on significant acoustic events. Yet this mysterious pulse penetrated these filters repeatedly, suggesting genuine significance rather than random oceanic sounds. No vessels appeared in the area, according to satellite tracking and radar monitoring, that would explain the sound's origin. No storm systems generated the kind of underwater turbulence that might create such acoustic patterns. No undersea construction projects had been authorized or reported in this region that could account for regular mechanical sounds. No seismic activity registered on geological monitoring equipment that might explain these mysterious pulses. Just these strange, persistent tones echoing from deep water without any identifiable source to explain their existence. The signal displayed movement patterns unlike any vessel or known marine creature. It didn't follow straight, predictable paths. Instead, it seemed to drift, pause, then resume moving in patterns, suggesting search behavior or deliberate investigation. Almost as if it were circling specific locations or methodically examining something hidden beneath the waves. But when research teams attempted to triangulate its precise location using multiple sensors, the signal vanished completely, as if it somehow detected their attempt to locate it and deliberately evaded further observation or measurement. A few weeks later, the sound returned unexpectedly. Same frequency, same slow, deliberate beat, identical acoustic signature. Again, no surface vessels appeared in the vicinity that could explain its origin, according to monitoring systems. No known submarines operated in the area, according to international tracking protocols and diplomatic channels. No exercises had been scheduled by any nation's military that might account for unusual underwater activity. Just that low pulse, tapping through the deep water, like a signal seeking response from anyone listening. Some researchers initially suspected equipment malfunction, despite multiple redundant systems showing identical readings. But careful review of diagnostic logs confirmed all sensors functioned perfectly during these events with no technical issues. Other marine monitoring stations in nearby regions detected the same acoustic anomaly at slightly different times. Always occurring at night, always in calm weather conditions, always fading before investigators could pinpoint its exact location. Marine biologists propose various theories to explain these sounds through known natural mechanisms. Perhaps an undocumented whale species, communicating in patterns we haven't previously recorded or identified. Or possibly a deep-sea squid species, using some form of acoustic signaling not yet studied by marine science. But detailed analysis revealed the sound structure didn't match any known biological acoustic patterns for any marine species. It maintained too much consistency, too much control, too much precision to originate from any known living organism. Then came the truly unsettling development that transformed scientific curiosity into genuine concern. A private research submarine, conducting an unrelated mapping project near one of the signal locations, experienced something inexplicable. They reported temporary power loss lasting approximately 2 minutes, not catastrophic system failure, but noticeable disruption. Their instruments detected unexplained magnetic interference during this period that shouldn't have existed at this depth. Compass readings drifted unpredictably. Internal gyroscopic orientation systems temporarily froze without apparent cause. In their official logs, they documented hearing a faint mechanical drone through the submarine's hull during this incident, a sound that matched no known system aboard their vessel or any expected environmental noise at that depth. They surfaced, performed complete diagnostic testing on all systems, and found no mechanical explanation for these effects. The interference stopped immediately upon surfacing, suggesting depth-specific phenomena rather than general equipment malfunction. When they returned to the exact same coordinates several days later, they encountered nothing unusual, no interference, no pulse. No sound registered on their sensitive hydrophones, just ordinary, empty ocean silence, as expected in deep water. Was this merely a glitch in Earth's natural systems, some quirk of pressure, temperature, and acoustic properties? An unusual convergence of natural factors, creating the illusion of intelligence signaling through random coincidence? Or was it something else entirely, something with purpose and pattern suggesting intention, rather than accident? Some researchers privately suggest it might represent a test or probe, a quiet signal from something dwelling in deep water. Something checking to see if anyone might be listening or monitoring these supposedly empty regions of ocean. Others propose the ocean itself might conceal more than just marine life and geological features beneath its surface. Perhaps signals, devices, or systems of unknown origin occasionally activate in the darkness where human observation remains limited. Whatever generated these sounds, it didn't maintain continuous presence or leave physical evidence for examination. It appeared briefly, moved with purpose, then vanished without explanation, leaving only recordings and unanswered questions. The logs documenting these events still exist in secure databases. The data remains available for analysis by those with proper clearance. The signal's acoustic signature has been preserved for comparison should similar phenomena occur in the future. But the whisper in the Caribbean hasn't been heard again since these incidents, despite continued monitoring and listening, like a visitor that briefly revealed its presence before returning to whatever depths or realms it normally occupies, beyond human detection. Far beneath the center of Antarctica, buried under more than 2 miles of unbroken ice, lies a lake unlike any other on our planet. Not because it contains exotic creatures or valuable minerals, but because it has remained completely sealed off from our world. Locked beneath a glacier for over 20 million years in perfect isolation from all external influence, this extraordinary feature wasn't hidden behind mountains or surrounded by impassable wilderness preventing human discovery. It remained completely sealed beneath ice, so thick and permanent that its very existence remained unknown until recent decades. Scientists call it Lake Vostok, one of the largest subglacial lakes on Earth, and potentially the most pristine environment remaining on our planet. But more significant than its impressive size is the profound mystery contained within its lightless depths. This lake wasn't discovered through direct observation or exploration. No human eye had seen it until satellite technology revealed its presence. Space-based instruments first detected an unusually smooth patch of ice, flat and stretched across Antarctica's otherwise chaotic frozen surface. This anomalous formation suggested liquid water beneath, contradicting expectations about conditions under such extreme cold. Ground-penetrating radar later confirmed this hypothesis, revealing an enormous liquid lake, nearly the size of Lake Ontario, hidden beneath the ice sheet. This discovery immediately raised profound scientific questions that challenged fundamental assumptions about Earth's extreme environments. By all conventional understanding, this lake should be frozen solid, given the conditions above it. Surface temperatures above Lake Vostok regularly plunged to nearly -90 degrees Celsius, among the coldest recorded on Earth. Yet deep below, where immense ice weight creates extraordinary pressure and geothermal heat rises from Earth's crust, water remains liquid. It has maintained this state since before humans evolved as a species, sealed away in darkness since mammoths roamed northern continents. This means whatever exists within Lake Vostok, if anything, evolved completely isolated from all other life on Earth. For millions of years, nothing entered or left this sealed ecosystem. No light, no oxygen, no new organisms, no external influence whatsoever. Scientists debated extensively whether to drill into this pristine environment, weighing scientific discovery against potential contamination. The concern wasn't merely academic. Whatever ecosystem might exist inside had never encountered modern microbes or bacteria. Any careless drilling operation could introduce contemporary organisms that might destroy life forms adapted to this isolated environment. After years of planning, Russian scientists finally developed a method to access Lake Vostok without contaminating its waters. They created a careful drilling operation that paused just meters above the lake before creating a minimal channel. This precision approach allowed water samples to rise without drilling fluids falling into the pristine lake below. The water that emerged was ancient, heavy with dissolved gases and minerals accumulated over millions of years of isolation. And within these samples, scientists found something that transformed theoretical questions into concrete reality. They found DNA. Not the simple, primitive genetic material they had cautiously anticipated might exist in such extreme conditions. This genetic material didn't match anything living near Antarctica's surface or any organism in comparative biological databases. Some DNA fragments resembled extremophiles, organisms adapted to survive heat, pressure, and radiation in hostile environments. Others proved more difficult to classify, unique genetic sequences, potentially representing entirely new life forms, never before documented. These results sparked immediate controversy within the scientific community, despite rigorous contamination prevention protocols. Some researchers argued these findings proved life had adapted to Lake Vostok's extreme conditions over millions of years. Others warned the DNA might have come from the drilling equipment itself, despite extensive precautions to prevent such contamination. But the most unsettling aspect of these findings transcended the debate about sample purity or experimental methodology. Some genetic sequences bore striking similarities to organisms previously documented only in deep ocean environments near hydrothermal vents. This connection made no logical sense with an established understanding of Earth's biological distribution patterns. Lake Vostok contains fresh water, not salt water, and has no volcanic activity that would create conditions similar to oceanic vents. It exists thousands of miles from any ocean, sealed beneath ice for millions of years without connection to marine environments. Yet life inside somehow resembled organisms from Earth's deepest oceans in ways that defied conventional evolutionary models. Since these initial discoveries, only a handful of additional samples have ever been retrieved from Lake Vostok due to extreme technical challenges. No robot has descended into the lake itself. No cameras have filmed its interior environment. No comprehensive survey has documented what exists below. The Antarctic ice continues shifting constantly, making sustained research enormously difficult, despite technological advancements. The lake's environment remains among the most remote and accessible on Earth, despite our knowledge of its location. And the lake itself continues existing in perfect silence, untouched, unobserved, potentially filled with life forms, unlike anything in our biological catalogs. Is Lake Vostok merely a scientific curiosity, a time capsule preserving ancient microorganisms from Earth's distant past? A parallel ecosystem that evolved in complete isolation following unique evolutionary pathways, never seen elsewhere? Or does it represent something more significant, a connection to biological processes and possibilities we've never considered? A window into how life adapts and evolves when completely separated from the rest of Earth's biosphere for unimaginable timeframes. We simply don't know. We've barely scratched the surface of what exists 2 miles beneath Antarctica's frozen exterior. We only know with certainty that Lake Vostok exists, contains liquid water where none should be possible, and harbors something alive. Something that has adapted to conditions we once considered incompatible with life as we understand it. In 1997, deep in the South Pacific Ocean, sensitive underwater microphones recorded a sound that defied explanation. It registered as low, rumbling, and organic in quality, but demonstrated amplitude impossible for any known living creature to produce. This mysterious acoustic event proved loud enough to be detected by underwater sensors thousands of kilometers apart simultaneously. Scientists from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration gave this unexplained phenomenon a simple onomatopoeic name. They called it the bloop, a designation that now resonates throughout scientific communities and mystery enthusiasts worldwide. Initially, researchers didn't consider it particularly significant or unusual compared to other ocean sounds routinely monitored. NOAA maintained a network of hydrophones originally installed during the Cold War to track submarine movements through ocean basins. The system had been repurposed for scientific research, monitoring seismic activity, undersea landslides, and ice shelf movements. But the bloop presented characteristics unlike anything previously documented in either natural or human-generated sound catalogs. A deep, rising pulse, resembling the slowing heartbeat of something impossibly large, echoed through the abyssal depths. Unlike typical biological sounds that diminish with distance, this signal maintained exceptional strength across vast distances. Multiple sensors separated by thousands of kilometers detected the sound clearly enough to allow precise triangulation of its source. This extraordinary acoustic range implied a source of tremendous size and power, far beyond any known marine organism's capabilities. Blue whales represent the largest creatures known to have ever existed on Earth, yet even their vocalizations couldn't explain this phenomenon. No living animal, not even the mightiest whale, should be capable of generating a sound this powerful, according to biological understanding. The location where this sound originated added another layer of mystery to the already puzzling acoustic characteristics. Approximately 1,500 kilometers west of South America's southern tip, near a point in the ocean known as Point Nemo. This region represents one of Earth's most remote locations, the oceanic pole of inaccessibility, furthest from any landmass. The water there plunges to extreme depths, cold, dark, and under enormous pressure, hostile to most forms of life. No major shipping lanes cross this area, no active volcanoes exist nearby, no obvious geological fault lines could explain the sound. Just empty ocean, and this massive acoustic event that appeared without warning or apparent cause. Theories emerged quickly as scientists attempted to classify this anomaly within existing frameworks of understanding. Some suggested massive icebergs breaking apart might generate such sounds through fracturing ice under extreme tension. But the frequency signature didn't match known ice events, which typically produce sharper, more sudden acoustic profiles. Others proposed underwater earthquakes or landslides might explain the phenomenon through geological movement. But these events create distinctive acoustic signatures significantly different from the bloop's organic-sounding pattern. The sound wasn't sharp or sudden like geological events, it rose slowly in pitch and amplitude before gradually fading. Too organic, too alive-sounding to represent simple geological processes, according to acoustic analysis. A few oceanographers quietly acknowledged that the pattern resembled biological vocalizations and certain characteristics, but scaled to a size far beyond any creature known to exist in Earth's oceans, according to current biological understanding. No confirmed sightings of any unusual creature accompanied this acoustic event, despite its tremendous power. No sonar contacts detected large objects or unusual formations near the sound's point of origin during subsequent investigation. Just the sound itself, recorded once, then never repeated with the same characteristics or at the same location. Some researchers noted with uneasy humor that the coordinates for the bloop's origin lie disturbingly close to fictional locations. H.P. Lovecraft's fictional coordinates for Auralea, his imagined sunken city of ancient entities, fall within the same general region. Pure coincidence, certainly, yet the parallel fueled speculation among those inclined toward more fantastic interpretations. NOAA eventually published an official report, concluding the bloop most likely originated from icequakes. Massive slabs of Antarctic ice shelf breaking apart could theoretically produce sounds that travel great distances underwater. This represents the most scientifically conservative explanation, relying on known natural processes rather than unknown phenomena. But even within NOAA, not everyone accepted this conclusion given the sound's unusual characteristics compared to documented ice events. Even massive ice movements don't typically produce the specific acoustic pattern recorded in the bloop incident. And since this original recording, no similar sound has ever been documented despite continuous monitoring. Nothing matching its unique characteristics in tone, amplitude, or acoustic behavior has recurred anywhere in Earth's oceans. It remains the loudest unexplained underwater sound ever recorded by human instruments without conclusive explanation. So what actually generated this massive acoustic event in one of Earth's most remote ocean regions? Was it truly just ice breaking apart despite acoustic pattern differences from known ice-related sounds? Could it represent some geological process not previously documented or understood by marine scientists? Might it have been a previously unknown species briefly surfacing from extreme depths before returning to obscurity? Or something else entirely? A momentary acoustic anomaly produced through some convergence of factors we don't yet understand? The bloop left no physical trace, no visual confirmation, nothing but a recording preserved in scientific archives. A whisper from the deep that momentarily made the entire Pacific Ocean resonate before falling silent once more. At the southern end of the Mariana Trench, Hidden beneath the restless waves of the western Pacific Ocean lies Earth's deepest known point, a place so extreme and inaccessible that sunlight has never touched its floor since the ocean first filled this abyss. No human diver could possibly survive descent to this depth without being crushed by pressure exceeding 8 tons per square inch. No ordinary machine can reach it without specialized engineering to withstand forces that would flatten conventional submarines like aluminum cans. This is Challenger Deep, the absolute nadir of our planet's oceans, and perhaps the most alien environment on Earth. On standard maps, it appears unremarkable, just another patch of blue ocean with no islands or distinctive features visible. Just another section of open water, with no obvious indication of what lies nearly 7 miles beneath its placid surface. But beneath these waves, the seafloor drops away into a massive scar, stretching over 1,500 miles along the Pacific's western edge. A trench plunging deeper than Mount Everest is tall. If you could somehow drop Earth's highest mountain into this abyss, its peak would still remain underwater by more than a mile, completely submerged beneath crushing pressure and perpetual darkness. At the bottom of this trench lies Challenger Deep, the ultimate depth, the final frontier of Earth's unexplored regions. For decades, scientists assumed this environment must be completely lifeless due to its extreme conditions. Too cold, with temperatures hovering just above freezing. Too dark, with zero sunlight penetration. Too much pressure to permit life. The pressure at this depth exceeds 1,000 times what we experience at sea level, enough to compress a human lung to the size of a ping pong ball. But when unmanned probes finally reached these depths, they discovered something that transformed our understanding of life's boundaries. Movement, shapes, living organisms where none should exist, according to previous biological understanding. Not fish as we typically recognize them, but strange translucent creatures adapted to conditions we once thought incompatible with life. Some flat, some ribbon-like, some with slowly pulsing bodies that drifted rather than swam through the crushing darkness. Bizarre worms, unusual amphipods, microscopic organisms, and tiny scavengers built to survive in a world of pressure and permanent night. In 1960, Swiss oceanographer Jacques Piccard and U.S. Navy Lieutenant Don Walsh achieved something unprecedented in human exploration. They became the first humans to descend into Challenger Deep aboard a specially designed submersible called the Trieste. Their primitive vessel creaked and groaned under extraordinary pressure as they spent 20 minutes at Earth's deepest point. The pressure windows strained under forces no human had ever witnessed firsthand. Lights flickered as systems struggled to function. When they peered out into the darkness, they claimed to see something moving just above the seafloor, life where none should exist. Since this historic descent, only a handful of people have visited Challenger Deep personally despite technological advancements. Filmmaker James Cameron made a solo descent in 2012 using a custom-designed submersible built specifically for this extreme environment. He described the landscape as alien and desolate, yet filled with subtle details invisible from higher elevations. Yet humanity has explored this region less thoroughly than the lunar surface or Martian terrain, despite its presence on our own planet. The limited footage we've obtained shows soft sediment plains marked with odd ridges and ripples, unlike typical ocean floor topography. These patterns suggest movement, as if something regularly passes over these surfaces, creating trails in the fine silt. Some robots have returned with tiny samples containing organic material that shouldn't exist under such conditions. Bacteria, microscopic crustaceans, and other organisms somehow adapted to pressures that would instantly crush most life forms. But deeper exploration continues, revealing stranger phenomena that resist conventional scientific explanation. Sensitive hydrophones have recorded low-frequency sounds that match no known marine biological signature in scientific databases. Blips and echoes that rise and fall with rhythmic patterns resembling breathing or deliberate communication rather than random noise. During one unmanned probe mission, recording equipment captured a metallic knocking sound repeated twice in succession. No source could be identified, no explanation determined for what might create such sounds at Earth's deepest point. Researchers debate possible causes, ranging from shifting rocks to collapsing sediment formations to unknown biological activity. Perhaps something massive moves through these depths occasionally, something we haven't yet captured clearly with cameras or sensors. The most profound revelation about Challenger Deep contradicts our previous assumptions about life's fundamental limitations. Despite crushing pressure, despite near-freezing temperatures, despite complete darkness, life persists in this extreme environment. Not merely surviving, but evolving, adapting, developing specialized strategies for existing where nothing should reasonably live. Challenger Deep reminds us that Earth still contains environments we barely understand, places operating according to different rules. Regions that resist our measurements, predictions, and certainties about what should be possible according to established science. There's no sunken treasure waiting at this depth, no dramatic shipwrecks, no lost civilizations claimed by the abyss. Just black water, impossible pressure, and the faint echo of something alive continuing its existence far from human observation. Something waiting in darkness. We can barely penetrate even with our most advanced technology and scientific understanding. There exists a rare ocean phenomenon that doesn't announce itself with dramatic flashing or temporary shimmer like typical bioluminescence. It doesn't sparkle with breaking waves or produce the brief dazzling bursts of light often seen near shorelines on summer nights. Instead, it transforms the entire sea into a softly glowing expanse that defies conventional scientific explanation despite decades of study. Imagine sailing across the Indian Ocean in complete darkness. No moon, no stars visible through cloud cover, just open sea surrounding you. But instead of expected blackness stretching to the horizon, the water around your ship glows with gentle, steady, ghostly blue light. This illumination extends for miles in every direction, allowing visibility across distances that should be impossible without artificial light. No spotlights shine from your vessel, no surface reflections create this phenomena. The sea itself emits light from below the surface. Silent, endless, unbroken luminescence stretching beyond sight in all directions, like sailing across a field of stars. This isn't fictional fantasy or exaggerated sailor's tale from bygone centuries, when superstition explained natural phenomena. This is the Milky Sea effect, a rare and hauntingly beautiful occurrence documented by credible witnesses throughout maritime history. For centuries, ship captains and crews reported encounters with oceans that seemed illuminated from within by some unknown mechanism. Entire horizons glowing bright enough to read printed text by, transforming night into ghostly twilight without apparent cause. These accounts sounded like fantasy to those who hadn't witnessed the phenomenon firsthand. Tall tales spun during long voyages. But in 2005, scientific confirmation arrived through an unexpected source that transformed folklore into documented fact. For the first time in history, a satellite orbiting Earth captured images of a massive Milky Sea event in the northwestern Indian Ocean. Not a flash, not a streak, but a smooth, consistent glow across an area exceeding 6,000 square miles, larger than Connecticut. This luminous patch persisted for several consecutive nights, visible from space despite its subtle intensity compared to artificial light. Scientific instruments confirmed the water itself emitted this light rather than reflecting illumination from another source. But despite this confirmation, the underlying mechanism creating this phenomenon remains incompletely understood by modern science. The leading scientific hypothesis involves a specific type of bioluminescent bacteria called Vibrio harvaea that lives in seawater. These microscopic organisms can produce faint cold light through biochemical processes similar to fireflies, but underwater. When they gather in truly massive numbers under specific conditions, they can potentially create collective illumination. Scientists believe these bacteria may form a quorum, a kind of bacterial consensus where they signal each other to glow simultaneously. Like a wave of silent communication passing through trillions of cells, coordinating their light production across vast distances. But a significant knowledge gap persists in our understanding because of one crucial limitation in scientific methodology. No research vessel has ever successfully sampled an active Milky Sea while the phenomenon was occurring, despite multiple attempts. No scientific team has sailed directly into one of these events, with equipment prepared to collect and analyze the glowing water. The timing remains too unpredictable, the conditions too elusive, the occurrence too rare to plan expeditions around capturing samples. When these events do occur, they typically appear in extremely remote ocean regions far from major shipping routes or research stations. Our knowledge comes primarily from commercial vessels that happen to sail through these areas by chance during active events. From satellite imagery capturing the phenomenon from space, and from logs written by astonished crews who witnessed this transformation firsthand. These accounts describe the experience with remarkable consistency, despite spanning centuries and originating from diverse sources. The water glowed everywhere we looked, not in particles or foam, just continuous light extending to the horizon. You couldn't see where it ended. It seemed to stretch beyond sight in all directions without diminishing. And here lies a deeper mystery beyond the basic mechanism that science still cannot fully explain through conventional models. Some witnesses report that the glow pulses rhythmically, not in waves but like breathing, slowly brightening and fading with regular timing. Others claim the illumination follows ships, parting around hulls, and trailing behind vessels in ways that suggest responsive behavior. A few accounts mention that the water itself feels different during these events, thicker or lighter in consistency, altered in some subtle way. What causes these additional reported effects beyond simple bacterial bioluminescence? No one knows with scientific certainty. Psychological effects might explain some subjective experiences. The disorientation of sailing through a glowing ocean at night, Environmental factors could create other sensations through temperature changes or altered water chemistry during these events. Other theories propose undersea currents, gas emissions, or electromagnetic fields might influence water chemistry beyond bacterial action. Some researchers have questioned whether bacterial bioluminescence alone can explain the scale and brightness of these phenomena. Could the glow result from some deeper, older biological process science hasn't yet identified or properly classified? The Milky Sea effect represents one of the few natural phenomena that modern science acknowledges exists, but cannot fully explain. We've observed it from space, documented it in ship's logs for centuries, photographed it when possible, yet we've never captured it in action for proper laboratory analysis, despite its dramatic scale and visibility. The Milky Sea doesn't announce itself with dramatic fanfare or predictable timing like solar eclipses or meteor showers. It doesn't flash or roar or demand attention from human observers scanning the horizon. It simply appears silently in remote ocean regions, glowing with quiet intensity until some passing ship drifts through its mysterious light. Then it fades away again into darkness, leaving questions without answers and witnesses forever changed by what they've seen. Deep in the South Pacific Ocean, far beyond regularly traveled shipping routes and well outside the range of routine sonar sweeps, there exists a stretch of ocean floor that behaves in ways that violate fundamental principles of underwater acoustics and physics. Not dramatically or catastrophically, you won't find monsters rising from depths or ships being dragged under by mysterious forces. There are no Hollywood-worthy special effects, no giant squids, no thunderous underwater volcanoes announcing its presence. It's stranger precisely because of its subtlety, a quietness so profound it begins to feel deliberate rather than accidental. A silence that seems intentional rather than merely the absence of sound, as if something is actively absorbing all acoustic energy. This region has no official designation on maritime charts or scientific publications. You won't find warning markers or restricted zone notices. But a handful of submarine crews, deep-sea survey ships, and retired sonar technicians exchange knowing glances when it's mentioned. They refer to it with casual understatement as that dead patch near the rise, a place where instruments simply stop functioning properly. This anomalous region was discovered accidentally in the late 1980s during what should have been routine commercial surveying. A survey vessel laying undersea acoustic sensors along the East Pacific Rise encountered something unprecedented in their experience. They weren't searching for mysteries or anomalies, just conducting standard operations to monitor tectonic plate activity. Laying cables, running seismic mapping lines, gathering baseline data about underwater geological processes. Nothing extraordinary. The East Pacific Rise normally generates constant background noise. Minor earthquakes, thermal vents releasing pressure, normal crustal activity. The constant rumbling and shifting of Earth's tectonic plates creates a recognizable acoustic signature easily detected by sensitive equipment. But then they encountered a spot approximately 12 kilometers wide where all readings suddenly flatlined without warning or explanation. Their sensors stopped detecting any vibration whatsoever. Not reduced activity, not diminished signals, but complete emptiness. As if that specific section of ocean floor had simply ceased to exist, acoustically while remaining physically present. The surrounding zones continued registering normal activity, again just a few kilometers beyond this silent pocket. But within this specific area, nothing but perfect, complete silence that defied geological acceptations for this active region. Initial assumptions centered on equipment malfunction, the obvious explanation when instruments display impossible readings. They methodically checked their systems, recalibrated sensors, verified weather conditions, examined all variables within their control. Everything functioned perfectly according to diagnostic tests, yet the readings remained impossible, a section of seafloor generating zero data. They even took the extraordinary step of retrieving deployed equipment, replacing sensors entirely, and rerunning the entire mission from scratch. The results remained identical, perfect silence, where constant geological activity should register on even the most basic instruments. Two other survey missions conducted by entirely different crews over the next decade reported exactly the same phenomenon. Same coordinates, same complete acoustic blackout, same impossibility according to everything we understand about Earth's geology. In 2003, determined to understand this anomaly, researchers deployed a sophisticated deep-sea submersible for direct observation. This wasn't a theoretical investigation anymore, but a dedicated mission to visually document whatever existed in this silent zone. The probe descended past 3,000 meters and began scanning the seafloor, transmitting high-resolution imagery to the surface team. What they observed contradicted everything they expected to find based on typical East Pacific Rise topography and structure. The terrain appeared fundamentally wrong. The surrounding ridge system should have been rugged, broken, and tectonically active. Instead, this specific section appeared unnaturally smooth, almost polished, as if intentionally leveled by some unknown process. No cracks marred its surface, no thermal vents released pressure, not even normal sediment patterns appeared in expected configurations. Just one continuous, level stretch of dark rock, displaying no obvious signs of the erosion or activity visible everywhere else along the ridge. And centered within this unnatural smoothness, they discovered something even more puzzling: a depression unlike typical seafloor features. Not a typical crater formed by impact, not a fissure created by tectonic movement, but a mathematically precise, oval depression. This feature measured approximately 400 meters across its widest point and reached depths of 5 meters in certain sections. It resembled nothing so much as an impression left by something massive that had once rested on the ocean floor for extended periods. Like a gigantic weight had compressed the seafloor without fracturing it, leaving a perfect imprint before being removed. But no cracks surrounded this depression, no impact damage, just a clean, precise indentation in an impossibly smooth seafloor. As the probe moved directly over this central feature, instrument readings began behaving erratically in ways that defied explanation. The temperature suddenly dropped nearly 2 degrees Celsius within 10 seconds, a thermal shift impossible in deep ocean environments. No known mechanism could remove heat so rapidly at these depths without active cooling technology or massive water displacement. Compass readings began fluctuating wildly, preventing reliable navigation despite redundant positioning systems. The probe's internal gyroscope initiated a slow spin without apparent cause, completely disrupting orientation mechanisms. Its positioning system lost all ability to determine basic directional concepts like up, down, or lateral orientation. No current pushed against the vehicle, no physical force acted upon it. System simply ceased functioning correctly. Then the video feed transmitting to the surface ship cut out completely without warning. 3 minutes of absolute static. Gray electronic snow-filled monitoring screens, despite multiple backup communication systems designed to prevent signal loss. When the feed eventually returned, researchers discovered something that defied logical explanation or mechanical understanding. The probe had somehow moved approximately 30 meters from its last recorded position, without any propulsion system activation. No thrusters had fired, no ballast adjustments had been made, no current existed strong enough to move the heavy vehicle. It had simply relocated without any mechanism that could explain this movement according to known physics. When researchers carefully analyzed the final frames of video before signal loss, they discovered something truly unsettling. For a fraction of a second, barely half a second of footage, a shape flickered past the camera that matched nothing on the seafloor. Something vertical, something structured, almost like a pillar or spine rising briefly into frame before disappearing again. This object appeared and vanished so quickly that classification proved impossible despite enhancement techniques. No other objects were recorded nearby, no marine life detected by multiple sensor systems, not even microscopic plankton registered. Just the unnaturally smooth stone, the cold oval depression, and a zone that actively resisted all attempts at scientific documentation. No research team has returned specifically to study this location, despite its profound scientific significance and unexplained properties. No official restriction prevents investigation, but proposals seeking funding for dedicated research mysteriously lose momentum. The last formal proposal to study this region was quietly shelved, cited for equipment inconsistency and unproductive signal return. Bureaucratic language masking a simpler truth: instruments don't function properly here, and no one wants to explain why. So the silent zone continues its impossible existence, a place where sound disappears, where instruments fail, where physics behaves strangely. Perhaps it represents nothing more than an unusual geological formation, creating unexpected acoustic properties through natural means. Perhaps magnetic anomalies, unusual mineral deposits, or undiscovered physical principles explain its mysterious characteristics. Or perhaps something older, something that once rested on that spot for time periods beyond human reckoning, left its impression behind. We cannot know with certainty because in Earth's most perfectly silent place, the ocean reveals nothing about its deeper secrets. Off the western tip of Cuba, where the Gulf of Mexico opens into deeper Caribbean waters beyond coastal shallows, there rests something on the ocean floor that shouldn't exist, according to conventional archaeological understanding and historical timelines. Something massive, something structured, something that appears designed rather than formed through random natural processes. And somehow, despite its potential significance for human history, almost no one discusses its existence in mainstream scientific circles. This story began quietly in 2001. When a team of Canadian researchers conducted a sonar survey near Cuba's western coastline. They sought potential shipwreck sites in waters exceeding 2,000 feet depth, areas where Spanish galleons might have sunk centuries ago. Perhaps even locations where Cold War submarines once passed silently during decades of superpower tension in these strategic waters. But what appeared on their sonar screens had nothing whatsoever to do with sunken ships or military vessels from any historical period. Their equipment detected massive geometric shapes on the seafloor, structures with right angles and straight lines that nature rarely creates. Blocky formations arranged in patterns, suggesting intentional placement rather than random distribution across the seabed. Some aligned in straight lines like streets or corridors, others clustered in arrangements resembling buildings or plazas. One structure appeared particularly distinctive, resembling a step pyramid with a broad base narrowing toward its apex. All these formations lay buried beneath centuries of sediment and coral growth, yet their geometric outlines remained clearly visible. Initially, the research team suspected equipment malfunction or data processing errors, creating false patterns in sonar returns. Sonar technology occasionally produces artifacts or misleading images when interpreting complex underwater environments. But repeated passes over the same coordinates using different equipment settings produced identical results with consistent detail. The team described their discovery as an underwater city, though acknowledging this term might oversimplify what they had found. More precisely, they had located a zone containing artificial structures too ordered and too precisely angled to have formed naturally. Some individual blocks measured over 3 meters in height while maintaining consistent proportions and alignment with surrounding structures. Others created what appeared to be avenues or pathways through the larger formation, suggesting planned space rather than random placement. One central structure resembled a ceremonial platform similar to those found in ancient Mesoamerican cities, but on the ocean floor. These findings immediately raised profound questions that challenged established archaeological timelines and historical understanding. If these structures were indeed artificial, if they were constructed by human hands, who built them and when did they exist? How did they end up at the bottom of the ocean in waters far too deep for ancient civilizations to have constructed them there? Mainstream geologists immediately offered natural explanations to avoid confronting these uncomfortable historical questions. The structures must be natural formations, perhaps basalt columns or unusual rock formations, shaped by underwater erosion patterns. Features created through normal tectonic activity and submarine geological processes, rather than human construction techniques. This represents the safer explanation that doesn't require rewriting history books or questioning academic consensus about human civilization. But not all researchers accepted this dismissive approach, given the geometric precision evident in sonar mapping data. You see, if these structures were indeed constructed by humans, they would necessarily predate all known Caribbean civilizations. At their current depth, sea levels would have been significantly lower when these structures stood above water, dry land rather than seafloor. This would place their construction at least 10,000 to 15,000 years ago based on established sea level rise since the last ice age. Such dating would position them before the Maya, before the Olmec, before ancient Egypt's earliest pyramids, according to current chronology. This timeline contradicts everything archaeology currently teaches about when complex human civilizations first emerged. No artifacts have been recovered from this site that might confirm its origin or purpose. No carvings, no tools, no human remains. Just geometric shapes, straight lines, and right angles where nature typically creates curves, irregularity, and random formations. Some researchers claim satellite data provides additional evidence supporting the idea of sunken land in this region. These analyses suggest an ancient landmass or island chain once existed here before post-ice age sea level rise submerged it completely. But mainstream academic institutions show little interest in funding comprehensive exploration of this potential discovery. The required resources for deep water archaeology at these depths would be substantial. The technical challenge is significant. Political considerations also complicate research access. These waters fall under multiple jurisdictions with complex approval processes. Some observers suggest the site has been deliberately ignored by mainstream science, despite its potential historical significance. That access has been restricted through bureaucratic means that more information exists than has been publicly disclosed. Such claims remain speculative without documentation, yet the original sonar images continue raising unanswered questions. Was this truly an ancient city predating all known American civilizations? A ceremonial site? A completely different type of structure? Something built by a society erased from historical record by rising seas and shifting coastlines as Earth's climate transformed? Or is it merely coincidence? Natural rock formations and shadows aligned in ways that trigger human pattern recognition. Stone and coral positioned by chance in configurations that merely resemble intentional construction to pattern-seeking minds? We cannot know with certainty without more comprehensive investigation than has been conducted to date. But 2,000 feet beneath the waves off Cuba's coast, these geometric structures continue their silent existence. Undisturbed, largely unexplored. waiting for technology, funding, and scientific curiosity to finally reveal their true nature and origin, either confirming their place as Earth's most precisely aligned natural formations or forcing a fundamental reconsideration of human history.